Good morning here on a Tuesday. It's Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Lulla. Andrew Rogers here with me as well
Hey, man.
on AM 590 ESPN Omaha and ESPN Tri-Cities. We are on Twitter, YouTube, all of the places. And we're live here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. Andrew, how you doing this morning?
Dude, I'm good. It's kind of recovery day for my lower body. I did a lot of yard work yesterday. I have this tree in my front yard that I told you sheds more than a golden retriever.
Yeah.
But it's a really pretty tree, and it's nice to look at when the leaves are falling. It's not as nice to pick up.
Yeah.
But, outside of that, I'm good. The weather is nice right now. It's supposed to get worse toward the end of this
Friday.
week.
It's supposed to get a little cold.
Which kind of stinks for high school football,
It
if
does.
we're being honest.
Yeah.
Now this is ideal temperatures for those players because they're all padded up. I feel like if you're a football player, you never get cold. Like you said, I don't know if that's just a me
if you're
interpretation.
I don't think never, but I think it's a lower point than the rest of the people. Because like when we're standing on sidelines or whatever,
right,
it's dramatically colder than
I feel like
I guess I'm thinking more toward their toughness.
Yeah.
Like they're so tough that they never show. Yeah, nor do they ever like look cold.
Yeah, I think they are. Because I mean, listen, it gets to a certain point, they're wearing the big coats on the sideline. They bring like the heaters in, stuff like that. But I think it's a much lower point because they're moving so much, right?
Yeah, but still, like if I played football, dude, I'm a wuss. Like I would want to play. I'd be like the pitcher that runs the bases in his jacket. Like that's what I would want to do if I'm playing like wide receiver or DB. I'm like
old school, like Greg Maddux. Like,
I'll take my heavy coat. Thank you very much.
Oh, you see, some of the guys, they have basically a hoodie on under their uniform.
Yeah, and some do.
Yeah.
Some are like me.
Yeah, some of them that
those guys are still probably tougher than I am.
The skill position guys,
exactly.
Some of those guys on the outside.
Like but no, like it's nice. It's a little muggy, but it's nice. I'll take the temperature that I walked out my door to all day, every day, versus the temperatures that we are about to feel.
Yeah,
closer into November, December, even worse in January. And
we're getting a little late, a little mid-fall push in the 70s here, and then. On your apparently weather show today, we're doing. No, it drops off a cliff though from Thursday to Friday. It's gonna feel like late October, early November by Friday.
Though, so after I did all that stuff yesterday, it was. I started with I walked the dog after the show. I listened to Coach Rhule's press conference, which was about 30 minutes long. Shane, good work cutting up all that audio per usual. And it's not shocking to hear all the injury news to come out of there.
Dude.
And we'll get into that in a hot sec. Then I went to the gym, and I walked in.
So you went to the gym after you did the yard work?
No, after I walked Molly. So Molly was like my warm-up.
Okay, all right.
And then I went to the gym to do my lower body day, and I walked in, and somebody was just staring at me as I just walked through. And it was guys. It wasn't like hey, ladies. No, it was a guy staring at me. And it was kind of like awkward enough to where like
did you have to acknowledge
it?
Yeah. Did you give him kind of like the what's up, man?
No, I just kind of like looked away quick, and then I did the side eye, like, are you still looking at me? So I did my workout, and then I wrapped up, and I was spraying off my area. And he's like, hey, can I use the spray after you? I'm like, yeah. Not really sure, like, what's about to happen here. Like a couple of different directions I was thinking through my head. And he was like, hey, are you Andrew from Hurrdat Sports? And I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
He's like, man, I thought that was you. I'm like, thank God. Like,
that's the best possible way that could have gone.
Right.
Yeah.
He's like, dude, I listen to your guys' show all the time. My buddy listens too. And then he just started talking to me about Coach Rhule. And he's like, man, Coach Rhule, like the thing I like about him is he's no BS. Like everything that he says, he does. And I'm like, yeah. Like that's what I've been telling you guys. Like that's him.
Yeah.
To a T. He's not somebody that's going to hide details. He's not somebody that's going to make excuses. And we heard that in the press conference yesterday when he's talking about all of these injuries. But at no point did he say, feel sorry for us.
No.
He said, here's who's stepping up.
Yeah.
Here's who's getting incorporated. And plus, guys, guess what? That 4-game window, we're getting pretty close to. And we can bring a lot of these red shirts in and not abandon their career.
Yeah.
These guys fight. They fight for the University of Nebraska.
They get through Purdue, and they can start bringing these guys in and without burning their red shirts, right? So help is on the way. Reinforcements are on the way. I don't know what's going to look like, right? But he named off 6 or 7 guys, just boom, 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 right in a row of that they really like how they're looking, but they don't want to burn their red shirts. And so they I think are going to play quite a bit because, I mean, we can just start getting into it now. They're going to have to. They are running out of bodies, especially on that offensive side of the ball. I mean, if you hadn't heard, Ethan Piper, Turner Corcoran out for the year. That's bad. Newelly out for at least a couple weeks. So that's 60% of your offensive line right there. Gone. Just up in smoke. In these 2 games.
The snap of a finger.
In these 2 games that are probably the 2 most important games
Thank
of the
goodness
season.
Ben Scott doesn't look like a long-term injury.
That it looked like I think he's going to – it sounds like he's going to play this week. He didn't get brought up in that group. Billy Kemp's going to be out for a couple weeks, so that's a different, position.
Maybe
group.
even more.
Yeah, he said multiple weeks. Yeah, he said multiple weeks. Newelly, he said a couple weeks. So you're missing, for the next 2 weeks, the most important games of your season, you're missing 60% of your offensive line, your starting offensive line.
But the good news is,
so you got Teddy Prohaska.
Right. You have a lot of guys underneath
Justin
that you
Evans,
expect things from.
Yeah, Justin Evans Jenkins, who
seems to be really liked around that room.
Yeah, he had been pushing for playing time already. He just happened to be behind some guys that they liked at those guard and center spots. All of a sudden, he's pressed into action. So you feel okay maybe about Evans Jenkins. And then you're going to have to get like Henry Lutovsky's going to have to play, especially in these next couple of weeks when Newelly's still out.
And when you can't bring up Sledge yet or Gatula yet.
So they have to get through this week. If they can get through this week and then Sledge and Gatula can kind of provide some reinforcements, and then hopefully you get Newelly
just some
back.
Depth, right?
Yeah. So kind of like Coach Rhule was saying, not necessarily rotation guys, but guys that you can bring in as, that jumbo tight end set or on PAT so that you don't have to have your main starters out there all the time.
You're not turning the healthy O-linemen into workhorses.
Yeah, right. You don't want to run those guys into the ground, right? So, I mean, it's going to be really interesting over the next couple of weeks as we see a bunch of different guys. And I'm wondering if we'll be able to see it turn into something like we have on the defense. I'm a little hesitant, right? But honest to God, there's probably 2 or 3 times every week. And listen, I pay a lot of attention to this football team. We kind of do it for a living, right?
We do?
A little bit, yeah. And there are 2 or 3 times every week when somebody on defense makes a play, and I'm like, who is that? And I'm not embarrassed to say it because they play so when James Williams is making the first sack he made, I was like, I don't think I know who that is. And I'm just looking. I'm trying to.
I heard Jamison Williams when I first.
That's what I thought too.
Connected the name,
yeah.
And I'm like, since when did we have Detroit's wide receiver? I guess he got suspended, so maybe they demoted him back to college, and
he
they
got
said,
relegated.
Hey, you actually have to play Big Ten West football. So that's your
the ultimate football punishment.
Football punishment.
That's your football purgatory is coming to the Big Ten West. No, but I'm sitting there and I see this dude make a play. I go, 90? Who is that? And, I feel like when I'm at high school football games early in the season and I'm going through the little paper roster that they hand out, I'm like, who is that guy for Lincoln Southwest? I don't know who that is.
Well, I'll tell you, too, with James Williams, I'm thinking Jamison Williams.
I know
in my head all the time now. I shouldn't have. I retooled my brain to say the right name, and now I just got back into a poor habit. It's like when you bite your fingernails or something. You're like, no, I'm not going to do it anymore. And then at some point you just do.
They do it one time and you're back in the thing.
Yeah. Boys Down Bad, a podcast on our network, actually did an interview with Williams before the season. And we got to learn a little bit more about him. JUCO guy came in for a camp, impressed TK. And basically Knighton was like, yeah, you're going to need to stick around and talk to Coach Rhule. And he's like, okay, that sounds good to me. And Coach Rhule's like, yeah, we're going to need you to come to Nebraska. And he's like, where do I sign?
Yeah, I mean, he had little to no recruiting buzz coming out of high school or out of JUCO. He's a Missouri guy originally, I think. And
MIZ. Wrong game.
They're what I like about the James Williams thing is he's a very good example of a couple things. Number one, that when they say something, they mean it, right? He's a really good example of Coach Rhule talking about how, there's guys that we really like that are, haven't played yet, that we're about to bring up and things like that. So when he goes off on yesterday and starts listing off these names of guys that he thinks are really good already and that he's really excited to get on the field and waiting till they don't burn their red shirt, I believe him because I just saw it in this dude that was on scout team 3 days before the game.
Mm-hmm.
And
sometimes I think the hand is forced a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. On the offensive side of the ball, especially. Defense,
Right.
Not really. I mean, they've had some injuries on defense.
Yeah, fair.
But a lot of that's just Tony White doing Tony White stuff, I guess. Or, give Terrence Knighton credit, give Dvorak credit, give Coop credit, all those guys on the defense side of the ball. On the offensive side of the ball, their hands been forced, right? I mean, let's just run down the MASH unit real quick here. So you're missing
there's
two linemen for the rest of the season. You're missing 3 of your top 4 wide receivers for the rest of the season. I'm counting Xavier Betts in there because he was a top 4 coming in. And you're missing the 4th one for at least for the next several weeks. You're down your top 2 running backs for the rest of the season. You're on a backup quarterback who maybe is the starter now, but he's not the guy you thought was going to start the season. You're down a tight end that you thought was going to be important to the year. Who do we have left? That's every position group, right? Is down at least a starter level player at every single position group. That's crazy. Like, I don't even know what to do with this offense because it's been ugly.
I don't think anybody knows.
No,
what to
it's because it's ugly, right? And you want to be
watch
critical.
Marcus Satterfield, and you try to be critical toward him, but at the same time, it's like, do you want to pick up that playbook and try yourself? Because it can't be easy.
No.
When you're recycling. You're throwing a guy in the trash can this week because he's injured, and then you pull him back out when he's healthy, and then, oh, wait, the can is actually still a little bit wrinkly, and so, like, this isn't working just right with this player. This isn't working just right with that player. Oh, I didn't want the Dr. Chill. I wanted the Dr. Pepper, and, now we have the backup in here.
I was a big Diet Dr. Thunder guy, personally.
Oh, not too shabby. I actually don't mind off-brand.
No, it's really not bad.
But
some of them.
We're so overly critical to just bounce right on top of Marcus Satterfield for play calling, and some is justified.
Yeah, sure.
Don't get me wrong. Some is really justifiable. But there are other times where I'm like,
what is he supposed to do?
Give him the benefit of the doubt?
What is he supposed to do in the situation that he's in? What is he supposed to do? Because
they completely changed what the offense was going to look like from Jeff Sims to Heinrich Harper.
And they've admitted, they're like, we didn't have any option in the playbook. That's not a thing that we had. And then we're like, I'm surprised we haven't seen him like call up to Coach Osborne in the suite yet and be like, hey, what would you run here? Because we don't have anything in the playbook that works for the guys that are left on the roster.
Whoa. I knew he was going to play that clip. In my head, that's what was playing in my mind.
And that's essentially what's happening in the middle of the week. They're like, hey, you need to run the belly G option pass. And he's like, all right. And
next belly G.
And the next game, Malachi Coleman to the house on the option pass. You're like, they literally are just putting together a playbook on the fly because they have no one left
who can me and Madden.
Pretty much.
Like they give me 3 play calls that seem right, and I'm like, I'll choose one of the 3.
Why not? YOLO. Let's do it. Right.
By the way, Mountain Holler, the off-brand of Mountain Dew, terrible.
Oh, so Mountain Holler, but you could only name 2 Mountain Dew flavors 2 weeks ago.
When I was growing up, we were poor, so I had to have Mountain Holler instead of Mountain
If you would have said Mountain Holler when we were playing that game last Monday, I would have lost my
I will say,
attitude.
I think we would have just shut it down. Just shut the whole thing down. Mountain Holler.
Good thing we played that game close to the end of the show.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And by the way,
half the time you walk off, you get mad.
Yeah, and rightfully so. Do you know the position Shane puts me in?
And by the way, when it comes to the press conference yesterday, he went 30 minutes, but I took a break halfway into it. And I came back.
You had a halftime for yourself?
I had halftime. I came back, and it was a dramatically different press conference in the back half than it was in the front half because it was 15 minutes of injuries.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was totally different at the end. And there was a lot of great stuff there at the end. And you really get the best audio clips and the best information from that press conference each week.
Robbie, can I follow up with something we talked about yesterday?
Yeah,
real fast?
absolutely.
So this is the last time I'm going to talk about it because I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Okay.
That's my Coach Rhule line of the day. So I read a ton into the officiating call with Cooper DeJean's punt return. Ton into it.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I got to figure this out.
Yeah.
Like I got to learn more, at least in this moment, so that I don't get lost in something like this again. So first off, Bill, I believe it's Carollo, who's the Big Ten coordinator of officiating. He said this: we don't do it often, but we felt this was a significant play in a heated contest. So that was
fair.
The changeover on the review. Okay. It was important that we at least be transparent and let you know the call, exactly why we made it. Okay, I'm going to start there. We felt this was a significant play in a heated contest. So you're telling me that if you review every college football play, that we'll just say the game in Houston, West Virginia from a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
Houston rolling out, they throw a deep ball. There's no pushing and shoving in the end zone for PI. There's no holding calls at the line of scrimmage. You didn't see any of that. Because that was a significant play. Let's just say Houston won on a 50-yard Hail Mary.
Yeah.
So when that play gets reviewed, there has to be something that you're like, well, that was kind of holding, but we're not going to actually call that holding because we're going to give a little bit of leeway with this call versus that call.
Sure.
That's strike one of why I'm not a huge fan of that. Then he goes into saying, Shaw stated that the rule was put in place to protect the runner and also defended the idea that even a small waving motion constitutes an invalid fair catch signal. I only want to focus on that first part. The rule was put in place to protect the runner. If it was there to protect the runner, why did you let the play go?
Yeah.
Why wasn't the call made on the field?
Yeah.
Because if we're protecting everybody at that point, not just the runner.
Right.
We're protecting everybody on the football field.
Yeah.
Right? And then the question was the play reviewable? Once you go to replay, you have the chance to look at all aspects of the play. Something that I said yesterday.
That's not true, though.
Yeah, that's exactly what he said, per quote of Carollo.
Right, but that's not true because you can't go back and retroactively call pass interference in college.
Right.
That's not a thing you can do.
Right.
You can't review penalties in college. And there's, I think, still certain instances you can still review pass interference in the NFL, but that's it. You can't go back and review penalties.
And then
that's not true.
Then he goes, but the reality is the rule book is pretty black and white. We try to interpret it and try to use common sense when we apply the rules. We don't call everything a holding play, even if there's a grab, but we try to manage the game. But this is a pretty clear-cut definition of the rule that they enforced at a real tough time, the winning touchdown. Again, no, because you can't just pick and choose what rule you follow.
Yeah, because they didn't enforce it in the real time. They enforced it after the fact.
Correct. And also, when you bring up a holding call that you're like, I'm going to let the play go on and not be
because they just go, hey, the rule book is pretty black and white. But we don't always call it.
You can't just pick and choose what you want to do.
No.
That was probably one of the worst overall.
Shouldn't have said anything. He shouldn't have said anything.
Overall, I don't know if it was a press conference because I'm reading it off of an article.
But shouldn't have said anything.
I'm going to call it a press conference. That's one of the worst overall statement gathering sessions I've ever heard.
Terrible.
Ever. And then the question was, and I thought this was a great question, even though we kind of talked about it yesterday, but what if DeJean hadn't been near the boundary? Would it have been reviewed? I'm like, that's kind of a good question. It was asked if the ball was caught in the middle of the field, would that play have been reviewed? Shaw took the question and did not directly respond to that, instead citing rules on fair catches versus invalid fair catches. Yeah, that's all I need to know.
Yeah, that means it's a no. It would not have been reviewed.
All right, I'm letting it go.
I don't even know why, but it's
I got it off my chest, but I just kind of wanted to read that to you because of how ridiculous
the
this
part
sounds.
The part of all aspects of a player reviewable is just simply not true. You can't retroactively enforce penalties. That's a real thing.
And again, don't get me wrong. A loss right there helps Nebraska in the long run.
Sure, yeah.
And as somebody that covers Nebraska and roots for Nebraska, I'm a fan. But I'm also a fan of Cooper DeJean.
Yeah, well, and it's also just...
And I'm a fan of just being fair and getting the call right.
I don't like it when people get hosed, right? That's a terrible look for the Big Ten. It's a terrible look for college football. And if you care about college football, you don't want those things... because it kind of makes you a joke, right? You don't want those things to be what defines your game. You want the excellence of your sport to define your game, not the blunders and whatever nonsense that was about. All aspects of a player are reviewable, except they're not. And the rule book's black and white, but we only enforce some of it.
Yeah,
and
it's just so funny how he just contradicts everything. He's like, yeah, I'm going to get in front of the media, and I'm just going to let the media destroy me. Like that's what he did. He just walked in and said, yeah, guys, come after me, and I'm not going to give you anything. And what I'm going to say is actually going to sound worse than if I kept my mouth shut.
And I mean, who was clamoring for this statement? I mean, I get people were still talking about it, but give it like 2 days, people are going to move on. You're just keeping this thing alive, which is idiotic. I don't understand it.
Yeah, a couple of things on YouTube. I think Jack Mitchell on Twitter found in the rule book that you can't call a fair catch after the ball bounces too.
Yeah, that's the invalid fair catch thing that we're talking about. But
they were referring to his left arm giving a mini motion as he's running to the football, nothing that goes above the shoulder pad, and that's what they called invalid fair catch for, which is still outrageous, because here's what they also said. Oh my gosh, I forgot to include this. They also said, if you look at the on-field views from cameras, you can see that it didn't get above his shoulder pad. But when you look from a high angle, that's the only way to make that call via review.
Yeah.
And it looks like his arm goes above his helmet. It looks like. It wasn't, hey, it does. It looks like.
Yeah.
How do you overturn a call then if it only looks like that?
Yeah. No, I agree. And the thing with on that Jack Mitchell brought up on Twitter, that is accurate, that technically that is true, but that's where we're talking about how it's something that is never enforced. The thing we talked about yesterday, you sent me a video clip of basically over and over and over again, this is just not something that's called. And Dave says you can retroactively call targeting. Yes, but it's because they specifically made a rule to allow for, it's kind of like the NFL pass interference rule. They specifically had to make a rule in order to allow that to be reviewable. And that was to make sure you're not throwing guys out of the game that don't deserve it. They didn't, like, you have to specifically make exceptions to the rule of you can't review penalties. So, Dave, appreciate the point there. It's just a little bit different.
Again, it's off my chest. I'm done. Good.
Coming up next, we're going to actually set up the show probably. Maybe. And we'll let you know what's coming up here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be.
Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Robbie Lulla. Andrew Rogers here with me as well. We are coming to you on a Tuesday. Getting you everything you need to know about what's going on. Sports, not sports, whatever. We got a good show for you here today. Tom Dienhart covers Purdue football for On3.com. He'll be joining us in the next segment at 7:45. We'll hit that Hurrdat hot seat. I'm renaming the AMA. We're calling it the Hurrdat hot seat.
Love it.
We'll do that at 8 o'clock. At 8:45, we will talk to Nick Osen. He covers Wisconsin football for 24/7 Sports. And then we will talk to our own Mike J. Schaefer at 9 o'clock, who covers
to hear from him.
Nebraska football for 24/7 Sports.
He does?
I believe so.
I've been talking about Florida International with him every week.
Florida International. You got to love good old FIU, the Panthers. And then we will wrap up the show with a special guest. We have our very own Big Brother in the house. Will be here at 9:45.
Yeah, great partner of the show.
Yeah, Big Brother, Big Sisters. They have generously helped us find a Big Brother we can talk to about their mentoring programs and all of that. So we will wrap up the show with Eric at 9:45. But I wanted to get into something we kind of touched on yesterday. It got a little bit lost in the shuffle of all the Nebraska stuff, but we got some more information, and Coach Rhule talked about it yesterday about the sign stealing situation going on at Michigan. And it was kind of interesting in the context that Coach Rhule put it in, because he's like, hey, sign stealing is kind of a part of what everybody does. It's just there's certain ways you're not allowed to do it. It's very baseball like in that sense, right?
Yeah, if you pick up on somebody's tell, you're like, that just shows your IQ.
Yeah,
of
absolutely.
the game.
But you can't use, like, the Astros got in trouble because they were using technology and signals and that
which
kind
is
of thing.
completely different from the Red Sox Yankees Apple Watch. Like, let's just shut that
totally
down.
different.
No. But like, in all honesty, like, it's completely
no.
night
It
and
is.
day.
No, it is. It's a different deal. It's a different situation, and like there was a organized and like well plotted out.
They were using replay camera and then banging trash cans for fastballs.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's the use of
it's completely different than using an Apple Watch.
Yeah,
it's still cheating.
Yeah,
and that's why the Yankees and the Red Sox were fined, but one is way worse than the other.
Yeah,
it's like a crime, right? Once a civil court.
Yeah, you got a misdemeanor.
One's
you got
criminal.
You got a misdemeanor. You got a felony, right? I mean, Alex Cora was suspended for a year. It wasn't nothing, right? Like the Red Sox were punished, right? Like they received their punishment, they took their medicine, and then moved on. And it's similar in this Michigan situation, right? Like you're allowed quote unquote to steal signs. You're not allowed to go advanced scout in person. You're not allowed to videotape. You're not allowed to do X number of other things that Michigan was allegedly doing. And you asked me this question earlier, yesterday, I think, that you kind of go like, okay, well, how did this guy get caught? Because we were trying to figure out.
Because I still didn't believe it was true. I'm like,
yeah,
are we just like,
no, it definitely seems like it's true.
Well, now it does. Now it 100% seems true. But see, that's the best part about getting more information.
Yeah, as you get a better picture of what actually happened, right? And so it definitely seems like it really happened and that it was a fairly organized effort. I think they're talking about 30-some games over the course of the last 3 years with this Michigan staffer. And you kind of asked, like, okay, like, how do you think this guy got caught? Like, and my answer was, I thought credentials probably, but I was like, he was probably dumb enough to use his own name. And if a person's name keeps showing up over and over again, eventually someone at the ticketing office, or if it was a press credential, the SID's office or whoever is going to look into who this person is. If it's the SID's office, they probably look in the first time to be like, hey, should I credential this person? The ticketing office, and this is the funniest part to me, is I know how these ticketing people work, right? Because I'm very good friends with somebody who worked in the Creighton ticket office. And so I know how these things work is if they see someone who is buying, especially because these tickets were allegedly about the 45-yard line. Those are really good seats, good sight lines to see the other sideline. So these are going to be expensive seats, right? This person at one of the schools bought 9 tickets over the last 3 years at one school. And so I can imagine, and I can almost guarantee this is how he got caught, is if you buy that many tickets, buy that many expensive tickets at the same place over and over again, their ticketing department probably reached out to him to try and sell him something, right? To try and sell him like a season ticket package or like one of those mini packages and be like, hey, you've been a great supporter of the team. And then they started looking into him to contact him and they're like, oh, this guy works for Michigan. Like, I'm almost positive that's how he got caught.
And that easily could be a good judgment call on your part.
And that's also probably why it took so long, right? Because it was slow enough at some of the other places. I think one of the other schools was only 3 times over the last 3 years. That probably doesn't raise a red flag. But I bet this school that he kept going back to was like, hey, let's go sell this guy something. He's a great supporter of the athletic department.
Yeah, and you know that's a good thought. It could be 100% on point. I think another thing too is though, and all you read are sources this, sources that, so you never really know like what was actually seen. But something else I thought about too was maybe, just maybe, somebody in the seats was, somebody's family member on the team.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if you see somebody
recording
the whole game,
yeah,
because that's what they were saying, they recorded the entire game.
Yes, yeah.
Which, first off, how much space do you have on your phone?
Yeah.
Because I hardly have any.
You've got that expensive iPhone.
I probably could record 3 minutes of action. That's how much space I have.
You need to clean out that phone a little bit, bud.
But maybe there was a situation of, man, this is weird that this guy is still recording and still recording and then he just, like, say I'm a brother of somebody on the team and I texted my brother after the game, like, dude, and thinking nothing of it.
Yeah.
Dude, it was really weird. Like,
super weird.
This guy by me was just recording the entire game.
Yeah.
And he's like, huh, really? Like, what do you think, like, he was gaining from it? I don't know, because he wasn't really recording play. He was just recording, like, the sidelines.
Yeah.
And then, oh, you probably can't be doing that. And then one person told another person, one person
one
told another person, and now, boom, we're in this situation.
And they're like, hey, can you look up who was sitting next to this person?
And the thing that it was the cherry on top of the sundae was the fact that after they did this paper trail to figure out who this guy was, they found out he had tickets to the Penn State-Ohio State game. Not just one ticket, but one ticket on 145
on each sideline
and one ticket on the other side. And that is bad.
Yes. You lose all plausible deniability there when you basically have a pattern of behavior. Honestly, and kind of this is, I'm going to make fun of this guy a little bit because it seems like he's a little stupid. Part of the thing that's funniest to me,
but he is a Marine. Thank you for your service.
Yes, appreciate his service, but that you're doing some dumb things now. He was a volunteer from 2015. He wasn't on staff until like a year and a half ago. He was a volunteer when he was doing
because he was volunteering, going to games and saying, "Hey, I'll record for you as long as there's a job waiting for me."
So here's where it becomes like it's probably a Jim Harbaugh problem. This dude's a volunteer, not working for your staff for the first 2 years that he's doing this. Who's paying for those tickets? You think those expensive tickets are coming out of his pocket?
I think the U.S. government with his checks that he's getting in the mail.
I think it's Jim Harbaugh.
I'll tell you this too. As I was kind of like reading more and more into the story, it just kind of started making me laugh.
Yeah, it's sort of silly.
It's like, wait a second. Why is Michigan the second best team in the country needing something like this to get a leg up on other teams? But then I started doing like even more research. And do you remember what happened against TCU last year? A game that Stallions couldn't attend. They lost. Then how about the game against Georgia in the college football playoff?
Yeah.
A year before that, they got spanked.
Yeah.
Again, another game that Stallions could not attend.
Yeah.
So they beat all the teams he does attend.
You're starting to wonder here. But
he didn't beat TCU or Georgia.
At the same time, being better than everybody else didn't stop Bill Belichick from cheating. So, it might just be a control freak thing. I don't know, but Michigan might find themselves in a little bit of hot water here. Coming up, we're going to talk to Tom Dienhart. He covers Purdue football here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Welcome back as we wrap up hour number 1 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Robbie Lulla. Andrew Rogers here with me. We are efforting our friend Tom Dienhart, who covers Purdue football for On 3. In the meantime, I want to remind you that we are brought to you by our friends at Rockbrook Camera. Rockbrook Camera, not just trying to sell you a camera. They are trying to help you become the best photographer you can be, whether you're just kind of a regular Joe like me, just trying to capture your memories and share them with your friends and family, or if you're a pro like some of the staffers we have here at Hurrdat Sports, and try to capture professional quality footage, Rockbrook Camera has you covered. They have great support after the sale as well to get you acquainted with your new equipment, and they've got the latest technology as well. You've got some old stuff, you can trade it in and upgrade what you've got going on there, or they have an extensive rental department if you just need something temporarily or are trying to try some things out. Go check them out at rockbrookcamera.com or in Omaha at 168th and West Center or 70th and Pioneer in Lincoln. As we try and track down Tom Dienhart here, you were bringing up some in the break, some interesting things about Jim Harbaugh. And I don't think he's in trouble. There are multiple things swirling around Michigan right now that are concerning. You've got the
best part for Harbaugh is he is a fall guy.
Yeah,
like
for
Stallions is his fall guy
for this one. And if it was in a vacuum, that probably wouldn't rise much past that level. The problem is he's got the suspension from earlier in the year for not cooperating with an investigation with the NCAA. They've got some allegations of illegal recruiting during the COVID season, similar to what happened at Arizona State. That's kind of flown on the radar, but the NCAA is looking into that as well. And I don't think it rises to the point where they would let go of Jim Harbaugh because, A, they love him there. He's a Michigan guy, and he's been hugely successful. But there's a lot swirling around that program for a team that I think as of this week is the betting favorite in Vegas to win the national title. There's just a lot going on there. Another place there's a lot going on is this Purdue and Nebraska game coming up on Saturday. And to talk about Purdue, we're going to be joined by our friend now, Tom Dienhart. He covers Purdue for On 3. Tom, how are you this morning?
Good. Yeah, I apologize for being delinquent, but I'm doing good. Yeah, Tuesday, game week, the Boilermakers were off last week. Been a little bit of a bumpy ride, 2-5, and this for all intents and purposes is a must-win game for Purdue if it wants to get to 6 wins and bowl eligibility. Because, guys, 5 games left for the Boilermakers. Again, they got to go at least 4-1. And one of the games is a game at Michigan. Purdue's not going to win. So that means they have to win the other 4 games. And that's got to begin if they want to get bowl eligible. It has to begin Saturday when they truck over to Lincoln, Nebraska.
Yeah, Tom, you mentioned kind of the rocky start to the season so far. I guess how in year 1 under Ryan Walters, how has that been received? I assume most people thought there'd be a step back. You lose, obviously, your head coach. You lose a longtime starting quarterback, along with some other pieces. But I guess how has the perception of Ryan Walters been through a little more than half of his first season?
I think that the honeymoon's starting to wear off here a little bit, obviously. There's been some frustration from the fan base. I mean, you can't measure everything by message boards, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those people are always a little bit on the fringe. But a lot of what's happened is with the offense, Graham, the offensive coordinator, some of the play calling, what they try to do. But, there's a personnel. It always comes down to personnel. Like, typically, I'm not sure what your playbook's like, how brilliant you think you are as a coach. You got to have players. And this is still a roster in transition. Ryan tried to bring in a lot of transfers. And some have worked out as usual, and some haven't. And the offensive line's been a big issue for Purdue. I know Nebraska has its own issues up front, but Purdue's front has struggled to protect. Injuries have hit that group as well. And I'll be honest with you, too, guys. The receiving core is largely pedestrian. There's not a lot of dynamic ability there. So, yeah, there's been some criticism and some scrutiny of the coaching. But if you take a couple steps back, you have to realize, again, this is very much a roster in transition as far as personnel goes, and even style of play on both sides of the ball with the schemes.
Tom, speaking of being perceived, how has Boilermaker Nation embraced the junior transfer QB Hudson Card? Do you believe he's done enough so far to win that fan base over?
He's a good guy, I'll tell you that. Good personality, seems like a good young man, and I think skill set wise, he checks the boxes. Has he really wowed? I'll be honest with you, no, he hasn't really wowed. And again, I think some of that may be due to his receiving core. So just really one receiver, number 4, Deion Burks, is the only guy that will go the distance. Beat you over the top ability at wide receiver. So it's been a mixed bag, I'll be honest with you. The one thing he has really brought is a nice mobility factor to that position. He can extend plays with his feet. He can execute the RPO and just make something out of nothing. Everything's breaking down, which is something they didn't have with Aiden O'Connell. So he's a skilled quarterback. There's no doubt about it. He's really gotten beat up. He needed this bye week. Almost didn't play at Iowa a couple weeks ago because he got hurt against Illinois. Was a little bit better, more healthy against Ohio State. So he should come into Lincoln at least healthy and able to give it all he's got.
Tom, where has been an area that you've been impressed with the team so far? I know there's been obviously some issues and areas of concern, but has there been anywhere that you're like, hey, they kind of are starting to figure it out here?
Couple areas defensively. They play that unique 5-man front defense that Ryan Walters ran at Illinois, and they've got pretty good outside linebackers. They're very much a cut above. Keep your eye on number 4, Tyden Jenkins, and number 5, Nick Scorton. Among your best pass rushers in the Big Ten. They can get upfield, athletic guys who always, empty the bucket each play, as they say. So that's been a pleasant surprise, maybe the real strength of the defense. The line overall has been a strength, I'll be honest. The back 7, not so much so. The inside linebacker is very pedestrian. The cornerbacks, they've been starting true freshman cornerback, a real work in progress back there. And offensively, I think the big surprise, even though I said earlier the line hasn't been that great, but he's been able to run the football. And that's probably been the strong point of this offense. You guys remember Devin Mockabee, number 45,
Mm-hmm.
He had a big game against the Huskers last year. He's hitting his stride again, and we expect to have his sidekick, Tyrone Tracy, back, who's missed a game and a half. So they got a nice 1-2 punch. So keep your eye on the Purdue backfield. If they can run the football, I know Nebraska's very good against the run, but if you can get some type of run game going, we all know what that does to your pass game.
Tom, Nebraska is hurting hard in the injury department. Do you think facing a ton of young or new guys is beneficial for Purdue or tougher to prepare for because there isn't as much film on those players?
Probably a little bit of both. I think the whole left side of the Nebraska line got hurt. The tackle and the guard for the year. Those were two guys, and I think the other guard got hurt too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's going to be concerns there. Like I said, the strength of Purdue's defense is its front. I talked about the outside linebackers who are lined up on the line, but the interior guys, you got a nose and two sort of in/tackles, and they got 6 guys they rotate, and they're quality guys. There's no superstars, but they're big bodies, and then get a push. So yeah, I mean, maybe people have an edge there. I think both these offenses are probably going to struggle to score. To be honest with you, could come down to something like turnovers and which offense can hit a big play or two, right? And I think Nebraska's got the most fumbles in the nation. I know Purdue's had some issues with turnovers as well. So again, who can protect the ball and get a couple big plays really may be what decides this thing. And well, I guess sounds like it's going to be a little bit of a chilly Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, it sounds like it might be turning out to be a real classic Big Ten West game, and I use classic kind of in air quotes there. What's in your mind, you kind of mentioned some of the things there, but what's the path to victory look like for Purdue if they are able to kind of start this section of the season off and make that push for a bowl game?
I think, again, like I said, I think they're going to struggle to run against that Nebraska defense, even though that has been a strength for Purdue. I think for Purdue to win, again, they're going to have to hit some big pass plays. See if they can score on a 30 or 40-yard pass. You're not going to have 10 or 12 play drives over and over again. So get some big plays in the pass game and not commit any turnovers, obviously. Win that turnover battle is going to be the other big key. And the kicking, well, watch the Purdue place kicking. It's been a disaster this year. They've used 2 guys on field goals, 3 guys on extra points. They're 3-9 on the season as a team, the worst percentage in the Big Ten. They missed 2 extra points. Nobody's missed more extra points. So I don't know. Again, if this thing comes down to a kick, Purdue's probably in trouble. So they're still trying to sort this out. They may get their first team guy back, Ben Freehill, but he hasn't been that great either. So this thing comes down to Purdue having to line up to kick a field goal to win it. It doesn't look like the odds will favor the Boilermakers.
Tom, we appreciate your time as always. And are you going to be out here in Lincoln on Saturday?
Oh yeah, I trek out leaving from Indianapolis on Friday. Always love coming there, staying in Omaha and drive over. So yeah, it's a great venue, great fans.
All right, well, bundle up. It's going to be a little chilly, all right?
Thanks, Tom.
Take care, fellas.
That's Tom Dienhart. He covers Purdue football for On3.com. Really appreciate Tom's time there as always. Coming up next, we are going to get to our Hurrdat hot seat, a little bit of AMA for myself and Andrew Rogers. If you've got a question for us, give us a call on the Warhorse Sportsbook hotline, 888-638-4876. We got more coming up next. Kicking off hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Robbie Lulla. Andrew Rogers here with me.
That's me.
And we are brought to you by our friends at Pratt Dental. Dr. Pratt, located in North Platte, Nebraska, is the only dentist in Nebraska that provides the BioClear method and modern smile design, which can correct many aesthetic dilemmas in a permanent and less invasive manner than traditional treatments. They are, you can get those with less time, less waiting, less invasive, and fewer appointments. You can reach them at 308-221-2800. That's Pratt Dental, creating healthy smiles.
It's a good thing you do those reads now. That's a lot of big words.
A lot. BioClear, invasive.
Oh, yeah, invasive.
Dental. No, we appreciate our friends out at Pratt Dental. We're on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, where I believe their signal carries to North Platte, so we appreciate all our
across
friends
the state
in central and western Nebraska as well. But it's time for our Hurrdat hot seat, formerly known as the Hurrdat AMA. We're rebranding a little bit here. I like
all about it.
I like alliteration. Hurrdat hot seat. Basically
HHS.
Hurrdat Sports hot seat. HSHS.
So you're making some renovations to the South Stadium is what you're doing.
Yeah, it's not going to cost $450 million to rename the segment, but we're making some renovations anyway.
It does in my head.
How much of that goes to you, though?
94%.
I get the 6%?
Yep.
I'll take 6% of $450 million. I can live with that.
And Shane, I'll give you 3% just because I'm a nice guy.
That's
Actually, no,
nice.
No, you're dead to me.
Okay.
You made me eat dead fish yesterday. So yeah, I blame Shane.
Hey,
So
you spin the wheel, you get it.
That's true. I mean, technically, you picked the jelly bean, so that's on you.
Technically, Shane needs
Could not
to live
name
up to expectations.
Could not name 3
I
Adam
did.
Sandler movies.
And I quoted Happy Gilmore like 3 minutes before. Did you see me? I tried to like put a thought in his head.
Yeah, that's cheating, by the way.
Hey, it wasn't like I was recording games or anything.
My favorite
or
part
sidelines.
is he just goes Waterboy and then sits there.
Yeah, well, because he was right off the bat, and I'm like, oh, he's getting 3
I said
for
50,
sure.
50 first dates.
At like 11 seconds, you said
Yeah.
50 first dates, but you just go Waterboy and
I
then
mean,
sit there for 9
Billy
seconds
Madison
and don't Happy Gilmore.
Most of his
just go with
most
it.
of his
Yeah.
movies are bad.
Grown Ups.
I
Never
mean,
seen Grown Ups, never
the-
seen Click.
You could have just gone Grown Ups 1, 2, 3 and been done.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know there was 3 of them.
Yep. Sure.
Or the all-time
Big Daddy.
Big Daddy's a good one. I
Great
mean,
movie.
you know,
I haven't seen it.
you could go the all-time
think I have it,
faves
but I
like
haven't
Jack
Wedding
and Jill.
Singer.
I'm just
Wedding Singer's great, but
Longest Yard.
kidding. Longest Yard's a good one.
I haven't seen it.
You haven't seen Longest Yard? Have you seen the original
Shane,
Longest
that's
Yard?
your homework.
I
The
haven't seen that
Longest
one either.
Yard.
I have both of them. I haven't seen either one.
That is your homework.
Dude, that's the funniest thing to me is Shane just has movies that he hasn't watched.
Mhm.
Like you own them, right? Like you own these movies.
Yeah, I own DVDs of both of those.
See, that's what I don't understand. Whenever I bought a DVD, it's either because I already knew I liked the movie or because I wanted to watch it and I would watch it immediately after buying it.
Problem is though, and then you can get to your AMA, you can get to your renovations, you can bring the bulldozer in, all that stuff. Problem is though, I have a lot of DVDs, and I got a lot of DVDs because I would go to Saul's and I would get like 40 or 50 at a time for like $40. But
Saul's.
It's
Yeah.
like Pawn Shop.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I mean, you'd walk out with a box full of them. So to get to watch all of them when you got them was almost nearly impossible.
Just start banging those things out, Shane.
You know what else is a good
Let's
Adam
go.
Sandler movie?
What's
And I
that?
think you can still watch it on Netflix. Hustle.
Oh, that is a good movie.
That's a very good
It is a
movie.
good movie. It's like, I mean, it's pretty predictable, but it's really well done.
Yeah.
Honestly, one of the better basketball movies because they use actual basketball players,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
So you got like Anthony Edwards in there.
I think Tobias
Um,
Harris is in it.
Yeah, there's a bunch of dudes in there. Boban's in there, which is
Mhm.
hilarious.
Yeah, that's
He's playing like an 18-year-old, and he's 40. It's hilarious.
This is my son.
And he's like 18.
Yeah.
And then you've
How
got
old is he?
Hernan Gomez is like the main character. But no, it's a really good movie. Yeah, there's a bunch of good ones on there. It's not. I mean,
You are so not invited to my bat mitzvah. Come on, Shane. You haven't seen that one?
it's not.
Murder Mystery with Jennifer Aniston.
See, I haven't seen that one. I heard it's okay. I heard the first one's okay.
Is there two?
I think they made a second one. Yeah, or they're about to. I'm not
I
sure.
was going to say I haven't seen the.
I'm not
second
sure if
one.
it's
Oh
out
no,
yet.
there is. There is.
Yeah, I think there is two.
I need to see
Hey,
it.
I've seen Adam Sandler in concert, so I've got
They're not all.
I've got that on both of you guys, I'm sure. I've seen him do his
Shane, that wasn't the prompt.
Do you
It
remember?
wasn't who's seen him in concert. It was how many movies. can
and you
Shane
will
name.
never see him in concert.
Says who?
I don't know. He's coming to Omaha again.
Says
Let's get
who?
him on the show. Let's get Adam Sandler on the show
Yeah, let's do
before he comes
it.
in
I'm
town.
sure it's pretty easy.
Let's sell some tickets. Shane, start producing. Let's go. No, didn't you? Were you the producer when? Well, that guy's canceled. Never mind. We'll forget about it. No, back in the day, Schick and Nick had a. This was pre all the stuff, but they landed Bill Cosby.
Oh yeah, Cosby.
Well, I
which-
set that interview
I would
up.
say, were you the producer for that?
Yeah, I tracked him down, set it up.
So you can get Adam Sandler.
I'm
then?
just saying. If you
I'm not saying you could get
you
Adam
could
Sandler. You
track
probably
down-
can't. You probably can't get.
Hey, I'm sure that's what everybody said about you with Bill Cosby. You probably can't.
I
get him.
believe in you, Shane. I'm like Matt Rhule. I believe in your ability to execute.
Sometimes when I would set those up, I wouldn't even say that I was doing that. I would just try for it, and then if it happened, it happened.
Shane, this
So
is
that was one
go
that
in.
that
need
was
you-
one that I walked in one day and I said, "Hey, we're gonna have Bill Cosby on like on Thursday. Hope you guys are cool with that." And they're like, "What?"
Shane, I
Well,
need you to go
what?
in with the mindset of if we die, we die.
Yeah. Yeah. Why didn't we get Chappelle, Shane? What happened?
You're not gonna get Chappelle. on. You're gonna have to
You
have
know
like
what we should do?
you would have to have like 37 different delays going.
Who's the guy in oh, she's out of my league. It's not the main character, but his best friend
Oh.
in the airport. Stainer in the movie.
Yeah, I know who you're
What-
talking about. I don't remember his real name.
Tom-
No, I heard he's I've heard he's kind of
Tom Dienhart? No, we had him on.
No,
the
we
last
just had
segment.
Tom Dienhart.
Yep.
You know, as he looks that up, you know what's a funny story about that Bill Cosby interview, Shane?
That, and if it's the Tom guy, I think you're talking about, he's terrible. But go ahead.
no, TJ Miller.
TJ Miller, that's what it is.
He's coming to Omaha, I think, this weekend.
Let's go.
TJ Miller.
Let's get some comedians on here. I like comedians. No, the funny thing about that, Bill Cosby.
Comedians can be good, but this is not the right time of the day for them. This is not their
Not always true.
It's not. This is not
Because there is a morning show I listen to in STL all the time, and they always have comedians on, and they're hysterical. It's just all about conducting the interview.
Well, that's up to you guys.
Well, yeah, and then there's no telling what's going to happen there. No, the funny thing about that Bill Cosby interview, because I listened to it live, Shane, and I actually missed a first day of a job to listen to that interview because it went like 45 minutes.
It went the whole hour.
Yeah, it was incredibly long. So I was in my car. I was about to start the first day of it. I was like 22 or something. So, it wasn't like a real job, but it was like I think it was like selling cable or something, some stupid job. And not that it's stupid if anybody's selling cable. It's just wasn't what I was wanting to do with my life. And so it was, I'm in my car ready to go into work at probably 30 minutes before the interview's over. Cause I was like, it'll be like a nice 10, 15-minute interview. And they just talked to him for the whole hour. And I was like, I'm not getting out of my car.
Well, you know what the funny thing about that is?
What's that?
If memory serves me right, that was probably the first segment that went like that.
Mm-hmm.
And now they do that all the time over there.
It's true. Yeah, we just don't even worry about the clock. It's just, hey, they're not tried and true professional stand on clock.
So
like
that was probably partly my fault.
It's your fault for the hour long single segment's your fault.
Yeah, apparently so.
You sort of invented podcasts. Like that's what you did over there.
You saying that because he's old?
Yep. No, I'm just kidding. Shane's younger than all of us at heart. Let's get up. Yep. Let's get to the Hurrdat hot seat. You want to go first or want me to go first?
I'll kick us off.
All right, let's do it.
Because I had this question kind of brewing in my mind last night after watching the ending of the Monday Night Football game.
Okay.
And I think it's unfair to criticize because I don't think he's had a lot of moments, if any, showing off his clutch gene under the 2-minute mark in the fourth quarter, down a touchdown. But after seeing how Brock Purdy played in the fourth against Minnesota, do you have faith he could put himself in the same category at some point as Rodgers, Brady, Mahomes, as somebody that is reliable to get points when you need points in that moment?
I mean, in the category with those three guys, God no.
But not even just like maybe use it because I don't want you to think so much on those guys. But anytime the 2-minute mark hit, those are players where you're like, man, I can't sit here comfortably. I can't sit here on the couch comfortably against my team.
Yeah.
When Rodgers has the ball down with 2 minutes to go, or Mahomes or things like that.
I will compare it to the previous quarterback, Jimmy Garoppolo. I never had confidence that Jimmy Garoppolo was going to get it done. And sometimes he did, but he was just the type of guy whereas anything good that happened always felt like a surprise. I still have confidence in Brock Purdy. And to be fair, you're right. He hasn't had many opportunities. Last night was one of the few ones. And I think Las Vegas at the end of last year was one where he scored with just over 2 minutes left. And then, ironically enough, Las Vegas ended up tying it. It goes to overtime. The 49ers ended up winning. But he had a drive with under a few minutes left and to give the 49ers a lead. Now, it was tied there. It wasn't to come from behind or anything like that. They were already tied up. But that's the only one I can really think of as a professional that he's had the opportunity before last night to really make that happen. The 49ers just have not played a ton of close games since Brock Purdy's taken over at quarterback. They've been reasonably dominant in a lot of those games. So he does need to get some experience doing this at the professional level. Obviously, we know he had that, Brocktober thing when he was at Iowa State and had some great moments there, but he really needs to have more opportunities to do this as a professional because there haven't been that many of them.
But I guess a caveat to all of that, when the opportunity was presented to Mahomes early on, he was able to do it. When the opportunity was presented, let's just say to Jalen Hurts, he was able to do it.
Jalen Hurts the year before last wasn't the guy that we saw last year either.
Sure.
We still have to remember, we're still only in – last night was the 12th game.
Yeah, it's year one for Brock Purdy.
He's started 12 games.
But I was curious if in your mind you had faith he could get there sooner than most.
I mean, I don't know about sooner than most. I'm still comfortable with the idea of him leading a fourth quarter drive or a late game drive. Obviously, it didn't work out last night.
Got to make better throws.
I didn't think they played. I mean, from start to finish, I just didn't think they played very well last night.
But also give Minnesota credit.
Yeah.
Kirk Cousins and that team played
Minnesota
very well.
Played great.
But against the 23rd worst defense in the NFL,
no, you got to be.
You would expect Brock Purdy to look better than he did in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, I think I think that's a reasonable expectation. Yeah, I just didn't think he played very well. I haven't gotten to the point where I am lacking confidence in his ability to do that yet. It's just, for me, it's a wait and see. So I guess we'll see sooner or later, right? I mean,
I hope he does. I just don't know if he showed me, if he gave me a lot of faith.
Yeah,
That he could be that guy in that moment. I feel like on that spectrum, and again, it's probably unfair to put this on him so early, but he's leaning more the Jimmy G side than he is the great quarterback side in regards to fourth quarter drives.
Yeah, I think he's probably somewhere between Jimmy G and like a Dak Prescott, Kirk Cousins type. Like that would be sort of where I put him right now. But he's also, like I said, he's 12 starts into his career.
Which I don't like the high end of the two guys you just named.
I mean, right now, right? Like maybe he exceeds that at some point. And obviously
in today's moment in the world we
Sure.
live in today, I'm like,
But here's the other situation, right? So put Kirk Cousins or Dak Prescott into a Kyle Shanahan offense with those weapons. Maybe they look different than they do in their current situations too, So that's the other thing you kind of have to consider as part of this equation. My first one for you, we'll do another sports one. Who is your favorite random coach in any sport? So that's to say a coach outside of somebody who's ever coached for your teams. Because we all have like random affinities for coaches, right?
Somewhat, I would say. Like I loved, and this is just because I didn't actually get to see him coach, but I loved all of his antics. I loved Bob Knight.
Okay.
And I just think it's because growing up when YouTube was like really kind of popular for me, in the early 2000s to even into high school, like I loved watching his blow-ups. But he was also a really good coach. He was a successful coach. Bob Knight for me was just entertaining. And I think I have an affinity for entertainment more than I do the actual style of coaching in that moment. So I would say Bob Knight, which is probably an off the radar.
Yeah, it's a weird answer. Yeah, I wasn't expecting that at all. Mine, I've got a couple. For basketball, I've always loved Greg Popovich. He's just obviously really good at what he does.
Very good coach.
Also kind of entertaining.
And as I sit here more, I'll probably think of another one, but keep going.
Yeah, he's kind of entertaining. Like he's got some interesting, kind of quips and stuff in the press conferences. He's a little bit, I feel like as he's aged, he's opened up a little bit and we've gotten to know him a little bit more. So I've always liked Greg Popovich. A guy that I like purely on football stuff or just coaching stuff is Jamie Chadwell. I just love the way he's the former Coastal Carolina coach. Now he's at Liberty. I just love all of the different, like if Jamie Chadwell's offense was at Nebraska, I would be so happy because it's basically a modernization of the triple option principles and all those read principles that kind of made Nebraska famous for so long. But it's really, really creative and there's a lot of window dressing on it and stuff like that. And it's just so well executed. Really love the way he coaches football and the offenses that he puts together. So I have I watch over the last few years, I've watched way more Coastal Carolina football than is necessary or probably healthy for someone who has no reason to do so. Just really, really like the way his team's playing.
I also like, it's speaking of Iowa State, because we just got done talking about Brock Purdy, Matt Campbell a lot.
Yeah.
I love how much he cares.
Yeah. I've always been a Matt Campbell guy.
And just the way he carries himself. There's just something about crying for your seniors on senior night and getting so into it from like a fatherly standpoint. I really appreciate his coaching style. So that would be somebody that I'm really fond of in regard to personality.
Yeah, just how
more
he
than entertainment.
Carries himself for sure. And his star has faded a little bit at Iowa State. I still think he's a really good football coach. I just think that's a really hard job. So we'll see what keeps in store for him. All right, number 2 for you. Go ahead.
All right, this is a non-sport question.
All right, let's do it.
But we've been talking about movies. We kicked off this segment with movies. What is the most iconic or best movie quote of all time for you?
Oh gosh. Man, that is a loaded question. Best. So for me, we kind of talked about this earlier in the week, and I know it's not like it is a big all-time movie moment. But for me, the most iconic one is the Maximus speech in Gladiator.
Oh, that's a good
My
one.
name is Maximus Decimus Meridius. When he meets the Emperor for the first time, or not the first time, but that's a good one too. But when he meets the Emperor and the Emperor realizes he's alive for the first time, that's probably for me personally. I'm sure on a like wide range scale, there's other ones, but that's the one that sticks with me the most.
If you build it, he will come.
There you go.
Field of Dreams.
Field of Dreams.
That is got to be the most iconic movie quote for me.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned speeches in movies. The speech Herb Brooks gives in Miracle has to be like the best speech of all movies.
Yeah.
Like that is just one that gets me so fired up every time I hear it.
I also get really jacked up for the William Wallace speech in Braveheart.
Good one.
That's a good
Very
one.
Good. The 300.
Yeah. There's a bunch of them at 300.
The messenger moment.
Yeah, where he kicks him into the pit.
Sparta.
Yeah.
And kicks him into the pit.
That's a good one. I mean, there's a lot of them out there, but yeah, for me, it's gotta be Maximus. I've got the tattoo. I've got, I'm a big Gladiator nerd. So, all right, number 2 for me. We're gonna stick with movies here. What movie have you seen the most number of times in your life?
Get Smart.
Really?
Get Smart with Steve Carell and Anne Hathaway.
Wait, but why?
Dude, I can quote that movie like the back of my hand. It is my favorite movie of all time.
Really?
It is so funny because it's so stupid humor. It's such stupid humor.
Yeah.
Like that is just me.
So you like see it as a kid and you just loved it and
forever.
Just over and over again.
You could name any scene in that movie and I would be able to tell you like probably the mark on it. Like that's hour 43. Right.
Well, not hour 43 because that would be a long movie.
Yeah,
minute 43.
Yeah, that was the credits.
It's the longest movie ever made.
No, but it is.
I was not expecting Get Smart.
It is my favorite movie of all time, and it's just I love Steve Carell.
Sure, yeah,
but
I
also just love the stupid humor in the movie.
Okay, all right. That's
what good hang time, huh?
I've never seen it.
What?
Yeah, I've never seen Get Smart.
What's in the briefcase 23? Could that actually be the football? As in football, you mean?
Well, maybe.
As in football, do you mean the activation coach of the bomb that may be planted? That's exactly what I'm saying. I don't believe in a real football unless it's signed by Joe Montana, and I don't think it's the case
here. Yeah, I haven't seen it.
What about you? What's yours?
I think it's Moneyball.
Moneyball is a fantastic movie.
I watched that.
It's long, though.
It is.
So you have to really decide, like, hey, my day today is going to be Billy Bean.
So I watch it probably at least once a month. And for a while, I just, like, if I was working or something or didn't have something else to do, I would just throw it on. And so it would just be on because it's kind of it's sort of like a weirdly, like, comfort movie for me. And so I would just throw it on and watch it. There was a period there where I was watching it almost every day when I was just working or whatever. And now I don't know if that's the number, at least as an adult, that I've seen the most number of times. Now, if you want to go back, I'm a huge Star Wars nerd, so there's probably I've just accumulation of over the years. Maybe I've seen it more, but the movie that I watch most frequently now is Moneyball.
Get Smart, by the way, 1 hour 50 minutes.
Nice.
So hour 43 would have worked. Thank you very much.
I thought you were saying in the 43rd hour.
No.
I was like, I don't think that's what you mean. You meant an hour and 43 minutes.
Correct.
Okay.
2 hours and 13 minutes, Moneyball.
Again, so that's not too long.
The movie, though, goes by slow.
Because
there's so much dramatic buildup.
And it's kind of like it's paced like a baseball season almost, where you're kind of working your way through it. All right, let's do one more each here.
Quickly, if you could choose any accent in the world other than your own, what would it be?
Easy peasy. I want one of those posh English accents. I love like a fancy English accent. Those are my favorite. I will watch TV shows and movies just to listen to English accents, which I get is ironic because, you know, I'm Indian and colonizers and whatever, but love the English accent. It's incredible.
I want to be an Aussie.
Aussies are pretty good.
Yeah, which is kind of close
Yeah,
to English.
It's in the neighborhood.
Right.
Yeah.
They're both unique enough English to be like, okay, I know that you're from Britain, and I know that you're from Australia. I just want to be the one from Australia.
Fair enough. Aussie's a good accent. That's a real high quality. I could see you with an Aussie accent.
Hi, mate.
G'day. I'm terrible at doing accents, by the way. I'm so bad.
Top of the morning to you. No, that's not it, Andrew.
That's a different.
That is not it.
That's that might be it. That might be Irish a little bit. I'm not sure what you were going for there. Coming up next, we will get into maybe some more sportsy things. We were talking about coaches earlier. I actually have a question I kind of want to ask you about coaches. Ooh, that's what we call a tease.
Hey, how about this? If we're talking about movie quotes and coaches, how about we go to Rounders? Pay the man his money.
That's talking about Tony White.
Tony White,
baby. Pay that man his money. More Hurrdat Sports coming up next. Welcome back. We're halfway through the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi Lulla. Andrew Rogers here as well. He just named a bunch of guys there that I totally forgot existed. Like Jacob Hood is one where we talked a lot about kind of coming into the year, and then he was banged up, and then it's like, oh yeah, Jacob Hood's on the team. Yep. So good to hear that he's back. So there's maybe a little more
Georgia
depth.
Find.
Yeah, he was a Georgia transfer.
Like half the transfers that Nebraska seemed to get.
I mean, half of them were from the SEC. Legitimately, I counted at one point, and they brought in, I think, half of their transfer classes from the SEC, which I like. But yeah, he went to Georgia, had offers from a lot of the places you would want to have offers from in that part of the country, and yeah, so that's a good little bit of depth there that Nebraska has. Sorry, I was on Twitter. The Big East polls just came out for preseason polls and preseason all conference and stuff for the Big East. So I had a little Creighton on the mind there. But Jacob Hood, yeah, that's a guy that I legitimately forgot that he was on the roster. And he's a guy we talked about a ton in kind of July and August. So hopefully they've got – I think they probably have enough depth there. It's probably a bunch of guys that maybe they weren't wanting to have to play. But Coach Rhule talked about this too. You know, he did this at the other spots, Temple and Baylor, and kind of he went really young, really early, and kind of let them go through their growing pains. And obviously he was forced into it here with injuries. And he kind of made it sound like he wasn't forced into it at the other places, but he kind of was too, because the older guys weren't bought in at the other places. So his hand was forced there too, just in a different way. And especially with a guy like Matt Rhule, where buy-in is probably the most important thing you can bring to the table. Like buy-in, which to me includes like effort and consistency and things like that, and doing the things you're asked of, or that are asked of you. And so really his hand was forced at Baylor and Temple too, because I bet if he had older guys on the roster that were bought in, he probably wouldn't have done what he did at those places and kind of started from ground zero. The fact that he's got buy-in at Nebraska from the older guys, which I genuinely believe he does. You just look at the way these guys play, and I think it's hard to argue anything but that. And he's been forced into it for different reasons here, right? But both situations, or all three situations, kind of had his hand forced into playing some guys that probably weren't ready to see the field. But, you know, sometimes there's only one way to get ready, and that's to just be thrown in the fire. Hopefully the offensive line can – I'm going to mix metaphors here, but learn how to swim, right? Like they're in a sink or swim situation here. The offensive line is the one that concerns me the most.
That's the question mark moving forward.
Because that's the one group that had mostly remained intact until this week. And now all of a sudden you've got some pretty major issues there. Like I said, 60% of your line is going to be gone this week, at least in the next couple weeks, 40% gone for the season. So we'll see what that looks like, and we'll see if they've done as good of a job on the offensive line in developing and getting guys ready as they have on the defensive line. It's a little more natural to rotate guys in on the defensive line, so that kind of would explain part of why we haven't seen as many guys run through, but I don't know. I'm a little nervous.
I think this is a huge moment for Donnie Rhule, though.
Absolutely.
Because this is a coach that you retained because you felt he was the only one that matched the vision moving forward.
Yeah, you liked what he brought to the table, and you liked where his head was at.
So this is kind of, you mentioned sink or swim with the O-line. This could be sink or swim with Donovan Rhule too.
Sure.
Because if he swims, which is the expectation, it reaffirms everything about what Matt Rhule has done since he's gotten here.
Yeah, it's a proof of concept moment for the coaching staff, right?
Because you mentioned the reputation at Baylor and at Temple, but especially at Baylor when they went with the young guys for buy-in purposes. Like at Baylor, buy-in probably would have been more with the older guys in the room if they had older guys in the room.
Everybody
after
left.
That scandal.
Yeah, everybody left.
But the expectation was still the same. The expectation was, if you're going to play here, you are going to operate my way.
Yeah.
Not your way. It's my way or the highway.
Yeah, meet the standard.
And that's what he did when he got to Nebraska too. But the big thing was he kept Donovan Rhule on the staff. He kept nobody else, but he kept him for a reason. This is where he will shine, or this is his moment to shine and to tell the whole world, this is why I was the one that deserved to stay. Not just because I can reiterate everything Coach Rhule wants out of me and this team, but it's because I created our line was better than people gave us credit for last year. And I was able to create an idea of what once was a good O-line and bring it back to fruition.
Yeah. And to create depth in a position group where people actively questioned how many guys that were even good enough to play as starters, much less have any sort of rotational.
And it also shows the development that Donnie Rhule is putting in with these young guys too, because if they step up and are productive, what does that do for his so-called future at Nebraska? It means he's never going to be a one and done, a two and done, a three and done. He's going to be somebody that stays in that room
for as long as he wants to be,
as long as he wants, as long as Matt Rhule is the head coach.
And it also is kind of for me, it's a proof of concept moment for the strength and conditioning staff and Corey Campbell as well, right? Because we've already seen that on the defensive side of the ball where he's gotten true freshmen ready to play in a position that's really hard to get true freshmen ready to play, and they have looked great. That's the question now with some of these offensive linemen, right? Because Nebraska's had big bodies, right? Jacob Hood's another one of them, 6'8", 340, 350, whatever he is, and huge guy. Teddy Prohaska, 6'10" now, which is borderline just too damn big to play football, if we're being honest here, right? I think he was 6'8" when he was recruited, and he just kept growing, and that makes his life a little bit more difficult. How has the strength and conditioning staff not just gotten these guys bigger, stronger, faster, but how can they move? Do they move in a way that allows them to be successful on the offensive line? Because it's the movement that's been the issue, not really the size. Have they not always been strong enough? Sure. But they've had big bodies the whole time. Can they move well enough? Can these guys move well? Can Henry Lutovsky move well enough? Can Teddy Prohaska move well enough? Can Jacob Hood and Justin Zevin Jenkins and all these guys, can they move well enough to execute some of, because that's one thing, the offensive linemen in when you're running options and things like that, those guys got to be able to move.
The personnel, the outside personnel from coaches, to like what you're talking about with the strength staff and the nutritionists and things like that, they're going to be the MVPs in this moment because right now we're going to find out if they've done enough with those that haven't been playing to get them in physical performing shape.
Yeah.
It's up to the coaches to get the steps right with these guys. It's up to the coaches to teach the movements.
Yeah.
But what do you need more than anything is to be physically able to perform.
Yeah.
One, and physically able to match up against your opponents. Like you don't want to get beat physically because Matt Rhule teams are physical. They are meant to bruise you up. But if you bring in guys that aren't fitting that mold, if you bring in guys that get beat up and don't do the beating, then it's going to be telling of not those that are either, planning the meals, those that are, planning the workouts, they're going to be the ones that may need to step up their game and get these guys physically ready to perform at a moment's notice.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you want to perform, at the Sportsbook. Go over to Warhorse Sportsbook and Casino.
I do have to get out there.
You need to
I
get
have to
out
cash
there.
in some winning tickets, baby.
You got some winners? Let's go. Cash in some winners. We are brought to you by Warhorse Sportsbook. They're the best place in Nebraska to place your sports bets. You got to be in person to do it, but you can do it from your kiosk, from a sportsbook teller, or if you are in person, you can use the QR codes and scan from the app to place your wagers as well in person. Warhorse Sportsbook, no bets, no glory. Coming up next, we will talk some Wisconsin football here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Robbie Lulla, Andrew Rogers here with me. We are joined now by Nick Osen. He covers Wisconsin football for 24/7 Sports. Nick, how are you this morning?
I'm doing great, guys. Thank you so much for having me today.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, you guys have a big game this week with Ohio State. But before we look ahead to that matchup, kind of just want to get your thoughts on the season so far for the Badgers. Obviously, much like Nebraska, you bring in a new head coach this year in Luke Fickell. Gone 5-2, probably as good of a start as you maybe could have hoped for. But, you know, you look back at that 1-point loss, or that's not the 9-point loss at Washington State, a low-scoring loss against Iowa. Probably maybe think you could be a little bit better at this point. How is the first 7 games gone in your mind for Luke Fickell?
Yeah, I think overall you put that really well. 5-2. I think most people would take that. I feel like there was a lot of, maybe impatience or frustration from some of the fans after the Iowa game, just because, the Hawkeyes offense is just not good, and that probably should have been a game that Wisconsin won. However, I think that this last victory at Illinois, come from behind, several starters or key players out, I think that was a really good thing. And I think overall, most of the fans really understand that this wasn't going to necessarily be 11-1, 12-0 overnight. I think that some things take time. I think that there were areas from the last staff or regime that needed to be cleaned up a little bit. And I think overall, there's a lot of kind of excitement, as you mentioned, heading into not only probably the biggest game of the year for Wisconsin, but one of the biggest games in the country this week in prime time, as the Badgers have a chance to knock off an undefeated Ohio State team.
Nick, a come-from-behind win over Illinois, exactly what Wisconsin needed heading into this matchup. A little bit of confidence. Were you impressed with the way they fought back in this game, scoring 18 unanswered versus, as you said, the effort to come back against Iowa a week prior?
Yeah, I really was impressed. I think you mentioned, obviously, 18 in a row. It was a decent environment. I mean, Illinois is not necessarily known to be like one of the toughest places to play, but it was a good crowd. Homecoming, again, essentially a freshman quarterback, like somebody second year, but did not play much at all in college yet, in Braden Locke. He looked incredibly poised. I felt like the defense made the stops necessary when they needed to, specifically in the fourth quarter. And Braylon Allen, he was mentioned on kind of your audio lead in there. And obviously, I think sometimes people forget a little bit just how good he is and what he's done in college already. I felt like the game planning was perfect in the fourth quarter. I think offensive coordinator Phil Longo did a terrific job. And is this the most talented roster that Wisconsin's ever had? Not necessarily, but I think that they are a very close group, a group that still has very high aspirations, a team that can get to the Big Ten championship, especially after Iowa's recent loss. So I was impressed. I wasn't shocked. I think I said early fourth quarter to a media member near me, they're going to win this game, just because sometimes you can kind of feel a shift and see kind of holes in an opposing defense. So I was impressed. And I think that when whatever the Badgers do the rest of the year, I think that's when you look back on in the early session of the Luke Fickell era.
Nick, I'm glad you brought up Phil Longo a little bit here, because I know there was a lot made of his hire when he was brought on by Luke Fickell, because, maybe didn't have the typical style of offense that Wisconsin's used to running, although his history is a little bit more run heavy than a lot of the air raid headlines would lead you to believe. But it has been a little up and down so far this year on the offensive side of the ball. Now, obviously, you've got injuries, Tanner Mordecai most recently, Ches Malusi earlier in the year. and obviously he's not coming back. But I guess how would you assess the performance of the offense under Phil Longo in what is – I know it's been something that's a little bit under the microscope just because of his different kind of style of offense.
Yeah, again, great way to put it. I think it has been put under the microscope. I think at times, within really this whole kind of shift, like I mentioned, you can look at things and areas and there's room for improvement. I mean, there has been at every spot, and that's just kind of part of college football. But I think overall, especially with those injuries, Wisconsin's offense has been pretty good. And I think it's on an upward trajectory. I feel like outside of that Iowa game, most games it's been solid enough for victory. Even the Washington State loss, I mean, that was just a high-scoring game. And I want to give Longo credit because, like you mentioned, there's still been kind of more of a rushing aspect compared to some other air raids. But I don't think there was a wrong button that he pushed in that fourth quarter. It really felt like every play was just chunk gain after chunk gain. I think that really going to Braylon Allen, a run play on 3rd and 10 against a decent defensive line, that was a really interesting play call. It worked perfectly. And I think overall he's starting to see, it'll be even more explosive and kind of how he imagines it, I think, when future recruiting classes come in, specifically this class of 2024, because there was a lot of just movement and shifting from the offense last year to this year, and obviously a much different system than that of Paul Chryst. But I think overall, like I'd say about much of this team, solid enough to win games. Like you mentioned, they're 5-2, could be 6-1 probably. And I think they're on an upward trajectory. I really feel like that fourth quarter is going to kind of instill a little bit of a spark. Whether they beat a top 2 or 3 team in the country this week or not, I think that it's moving in the right direction, guys.
Nick, we saw last week that Penn State could hardly move the football against the Buckeyes. Is there any bone in your body that thinks this Badgers team will have better luck getting down the field with a backup QB? Or was the only way to be competitive in this game, in your mind, having Tanner Mordecai under center?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And quite honestly, it will be tough. I mean, I think that's very fair to say. I don't think Penn State's offense has been perfect this season, but I was able to see some of that game. Ohio State's defense looked great. They've come up with enough stops at times really this season. I think kind of the backbone of their team's a little bit different this year and kind of how they're figuring out ways to win up there in Columbus. So while I do think that the Badgers will miss Tanner Mordecai's experience and kind of some of his mobility, he's made some great plays with his legs. Guys, I'm sure you've been to a night game at Camp Randall or maybe heard about them. It is something special. I think Braden Locke is actually a perfect fit for this offense. So while I don't think the Badgers are going to necessarily put up, 35, 42 points against this defense, I do think they'll be able to move the ball. The key to me here is actually just kind of perfection in the play calling and doling it out quickly, kind of like we've seen in this air raid. I think that Locke did a great job of that. I believe it was late in the third, early fourth quarter before they kind of fully came back, just taking what the defense gives them, whether it's a 4-yard gain or 7. Not every play kind of has to be this major chunk. I think it's going to be it's obviously a major challenge against the top team, but I don't think there will be a major drop-off, at least in terms of gaining yards against this defense from Mordecai to Locke.
Nick, as you look through the last 5 games of the schedule, obviously Ohio State this week is the toughest challenge on there. But after that, it's all pretty winnable. Indiana, Northwestern, Nebraska, Minnesota. If kind of climb into the mind of a Wisconsin fan there, is anything less than 4-1 on the way out going to be disappointing?
Absolutely. I think knowing these fans a little bit and just kind of what they're accustomed to, I think there are levels of understanding. Maybe if they at least make things really competitive this weekend, they roll out 3 in a row and then, a tough, close loss at the end of the season, maybe there's some understanding there. Minnesota has shown a little bit of life, I think 2 out of the last 3 weeks here in the Big Ten. But I think overall, that would get them to, 9 wins?
3,
I think that's a very fair expectation. And you know what? I want to give the fans credit. I think they're being very, kind of realistic about this game. Obviously, they hope for a victory. I think a lot of them just want to see it much more competitive than it's been some of these recent years. And I think that's very fair. I actually do think it'll be competitive. I think Badgers have a great shot to make it under kind of that 14-point spread, and I think they even keep it close early. But overall, yeah, I think anything less than a 4-1 finish for this Wisconsin team would be a bit disappointing. You mentioned the schedule, but also Wisconsin's simply more talented than all of those teams, really, the rest of the way outside of OSU.
Nick, we're going to get you out of here on this one, about a minute left. I'm curious, you make the hire of Luke Fickell. I imagine the reason you make that move is to take that next step from, hey, Big Ten contender to college football playoff contender. In your mind, what's a realistic timeline for them to try and make that leap as the landscape of the Big Ten changes and as Luke Fickell tries to kind of put his imprints on the program?
Yeah, it's really interesting because, obviously the college football playoff is expanding, but so is the Big Ten. And I think the quality of those teams that the conference is bringing in is really kind of off the charts. I would have said probably next year just because it's expanding to 12. But now with kind of getting new recruiting classes in, some of the top tier talent that's coming in, I'd probably say from maybe a season and a half from now to 2 seasons. Okay. I think soon enough. I think he's got the capability, but it's still a bit of a process for sure.
That's Nick Osen of 24/7 Sports covering Wisconsin football. Nick, we appreciate your time. Have a good weekend.
Be back, guys. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Nick.
That is Nick Osen of 24/7 Sports. Speaking of 24/7 Sports, our very own Mike Schaefer, by very own, I mean right here in the great state of Nebraska. He covers the Huskers for 24/7 Sports. He's coming up next on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Kicking off hour number 3 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Robbie Lulla here with Andrew Rogers. We're brought to you by Big Brothers Big Sisters, whose mission it is to support one-to-one mentoring relationships that ignite the power and promise of youth. Go to mentoromaha.org to sign up to become a big or to donate money or tickets to events for existing matches. And you can get involved in many different ways at mentoromaha.org. Speaking of which, we're going to talk to a big brother at 9:45.
That we will.
To wrap up the show. Joining us now, not a big brother,
well,
but
maybe to you.
Has a big brother looking beard. He's older than you. Maybe could be a big brother type for you. Really more of a
hey bro, what's going on?
Fraternal twin. Me maybe. We've got Mike Schaefer.
Yeah, Mike Schaefer and I used to share a room growing up. We're big brothers. Yeah, big brother guys.
Mike Schaefer, 24/7 Sports, Husker 24/7. Schaefer, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing well. I'm sure I'm not the guest that you would have preferred to have on Tuesday morning after your 49ers were unable to solve the Rubik's Cube that is the Minnesota Vikings defense. I know it's difficult, and then you had to watch as Kyle Shanahan's guy, Kirk Cousins, just carves up that defense. It's, it's the best win of my last couple years. So I'm going to soak it in for all it's worth. You have your eyes on a bigger prize, but last night was pretty big for me.
Yeah, I mean, listen, kudos on the win. 49ers didn't play very well. You're going to kind of do what you do there. And listen, if regular season win is what it takes to get you through the season, all for helping out the Vikings fans that way. We're doing, much like with Big Brothers, Big Sisters, we like to do a little charity work sometimes at the 49ers. So,
yeah, no, I'll take all the charity that Minnesota can get. Like it's fine. They're already in the best charity organization possible, the NFC North, constantly just, donation after donation after donation to that division. So I'm fine with it. And, I hope that we get to see a playoff rematch.
The funny thing is, I think I actually picked the Vikings to win that division because I looked at it and I was like, okay, I didn't want to jump on the Lions bandwagon because, there was a little too much hype there. I wasn't feeling it, but I was like, the Bears are going to be terrible. Sorry. I wasn't buying the Jordan Love stuff in Green Bay.
Did the Bears win this week?
I think
they did.
Did the 49ers win this week?
They didn't. No,
that's all I have to say.
Okay, all right. You can keep it if you don't want to switch rosters. Or
Tyson Badgett
you keep
is
it.
sick.
You just keep Tyson.
Give
Badgett.
me the Heisman in Division 2 all day, every day.
What is that? Is it
over Brockalicious Purdy?
What is it? That's the Walter
Harlan
Payton
Hill,
Award now. I thought they renamed it to the Walter Payton.
Oh, they might have. Yeah, it used to be Harlan Hill, I think.
Yeah, you're right. I wanted to say the Herman Award, but that's the Heisman Trophy for men's soccer in college. Because. Well, our guy Duncan McGuire won it here. He's an Omaha kid, right? Okay. Anyway, let's talk about Nebraska because that's what we brought you on here for, allegedly.
Are you sure? I mean, we can go
Hill.
wherever you go.
Well, I mean, I was lucky to be distracted last night as the 49ers weren't performing well to see the Rangers knock off the evil Astros. I was excited about that. We got a game 7 in the NLCS. I mean, the baseball playoffs are starting to pick up a little bit.
Yeah, I know. It's now that we've moved past the point of the crying where people were upset that, the teams that win 99 games should just get a bye all the way to the World Series. Turns out once we move past all of those tiers, and just enjoy the baseball for what it is, it's been pretty good. You can't ask for two game 7s in your league championship series. It's pretty phenomenal.
Couldn't agree more.
That's great.
That's as good as it gets. You don't,
because of the divisional series were just 2-0 sweeps.
Yeah, right. We're done here. I would encourage people that want the regular season teams to be rewarded. Not to drop my second soccer reference in 5 minutes, but European football, like they just the winner of the league is the winner of the league. There's no playoffs. Like that's kind of what people are asking for here.
Yeah, I don't want that. Keep that on the other side of the ocean.
Like
just
we like
that
playoffs.
for the loser mentality over there.
We like playoffs. Let's
reward random hotness at a random period of time. That is what we do in America.
You know why?
That's how they won the war. They got hot at the right time. People forget that.
I think it might have a little something to do with the French as well. But no, I like that take. Is America won the war because they just got hot at the right time.
That's what it is. They won the league table. Nobody cares. America won the cup.
The British were a little bit lackadaisical after getting a huge lead in the regular season. They weren't playing games that mattered down the stretch, and they got a little lazy. Too much
rest.
It was the rest versus rust. The British troops were on the rust side, and man, the American troops, they've been playing playoff games this whole time, and they got it done.
You think they weren't prepared for Valley Forge?
See, if this was how my history lesson went, I'd probably actually learn something.
If Andrew was sitting there, it's like, wait, so the Americans got hot late, and they were like a wild card into the division, and they made it in, and they got hot.
How many points?
Wait, who's David Freeze in this scenario?
What was that, Schaefer?
There were how many point underdog at Yorktown?
At least 3 touchdowns. This might have been an Appalachian State over Michigan situation, if we're being honest here.
Yeah, they got Nathan Hale back off the IR, and it really turned things around for him.
Wait, so is the sign stealer? Is that Benedict Cumberbatch? Is that or not Benedict? Who's that? Benedict Arnold. Benedict Cumberbatch.
Yeah, he's Doctor Strange.
He's Doctor Strange. Yeah,
Connor Stallions is Doctor Strange. I think that actually fits pretty well.
Benedict Arnold. Oh gosh.
No, it's Eggs Benedict. That's what
I'm actually not a big Eggs Benedict guy.
No, not so much.
It's like the hollandaise sauce. I don't know. I'm not about it. Schaefer, you look like a Benedict guy. No?
It's on the breakfast menu, and I'm going right by to find the skillets, to find breakfast burritos, huevos rancheros, or the sweet tooth really hits, and it's like the French toast, or even pancakes, as boring as it gets sometimes. I take those all over Eggs Benedict.
I've been doing a lot of chicken fried steaks with like a sausage gravy lately.
Yeah.
It doesn't come out as good as it goes in, but I love it.
I didn't really,
I mean, does anything? I mean, really?
I hope not. I mean, if it's the same going in as coming out, either you've got a digestive problem or you're eating literal crap.
You have different versions of what we enjoy about eating, Andrew, if that's what we're looking for.
I'm just saying, country fried steaks just don't go through my stomach the way that I wish they would.
Unless you're one of those like bodybuilders that's like blending up their food, like chicken and stuff, and drinking it that way, it's gonna come out differently than it goes in. All right, Schaefer. Well, that was a good waste of 10 minutes. I appreciate that.
That's the goal every time I come on this show.
That American Revolution take really got me. You flustered me into saying Benedict Cumberbatch.
The British are coming.
No, that's Paul Revere. That's not Doctor Strange.
Thank you. Let's just go into a different dimension and talk sports now.
All right. Hey, good call there on the Doctor Strange. I like that. We're going into the mirror dimension where this interview actually was on track.
Now we just wasted another minute.
Maybe. Schaefer, The Huskers, they have an opportunity to be bowl eligible before, basically by the start of November here. But they've got basically a mash unit on offense. I guess, how do you weigh the opportunity of the schedule versus the hardships that they've started facing in terms of just depleted roster?
In a weird way, the fact that they've been dealing with injuries the entire year sort of allows the mentality for them to just kind of move on with it. Like, they've had to have backups everywhere else. Now they have more backups on the offensive line. I don't say this to be malicious, but it's not like I'm not anticipating that the drop off from what was starting on the offensive line to who is going to come in is going to be so severe that it completely wrecks an offense that already kind of is limited anyways. So
Sure.
a lot of it to me is just like, all right, like, it's the next guy that has to step in here. We've seen this already. Like, Emmett Johnson's a 4-string running back, and he had the best day for running backs on Saturday. Heinrich Haarberg's your backup quarterback, and he's giving you opportunities every week, and Malachi Coleman steps in and wasn't expected to really be as involved as he is right now. And he comes in with the critical big catch running by the defense there in the fourth quarter. So it's just I think if you view it from the mentality, okay, we've been down this road, guys have had to step up. It's now Henry Lutovsky's turn. It's now Teddy Prohaska's turn.
Mm-hmm.
It's now time for Gunnar Gatula to be available if he has to come in. Sam Sledge, guys like that. Like, it's just I think the mentality has been built with inside the walls, and now it just needs to be built with inside the offensive line room. I mean, that's everybody else is taking their turn on the wheel. And so I would imagine the pride factor is, okay, now it's our turn to pick our guys up. And I think that has to be the way you approach it, because there shouldn't be a panic. It should just be, all right, we got to put one foot in front of the other. That's what we've been doing all year long. Why change it now?
Schaefer, if Nebraska didn't have Matt Rhule as their head coach this season, do you think whomever held the role would be able to navigate the injury troubles just as well and keep the Huskers in a position to keep winning games?
It's hard without knowing who the other person is, and there are other coaches that would probably be able to navigate this or have found some ways to mitigate some of the losses. But I think it certainly speaks to what the hope is for Matt Rhule, that he has been able to kind of navigate a season in which has not gone in any fashion how Nebraska would have wanted on the offensive side of the ball. Defensively, it's been everything and more that you could have asked for. So I think, in part because they have one unit that they've just been able to rely on in every game that doesn't involve the arguably best team in the country. Nebraska's defense has shown up for at least 3 quarters. They have forced other teams to change and adapt to them, which I think is kind of the remarkable aspect of all of it. And that alone kind of gives you an opportunity. I think part of the NFL mentality that Matt Rhule has brought to this team, which is every game is going to come down to about, a handful of plays, and we have to continue working hard. You can't just let one play sit in your head for too long. You can't let that defeat you. You're going to have another opportunity. And it's always time for someone else to step up, and a different person is doing it every week. I mean, if you're Henry Lutovsky and you see that James Williams, a scout team defensive end, went in last week and had a massive game, you should feel like the same thing that allowed James Williams to flourish within the walls of that organization should allow you to step in and play well. And you have experience where James Williams is not. Same thing with Teddy Prohaska. I mean, I think from a confidence standpoint, it would require a different type of coach to be able to do what Matt Rhule has given these guys. We just haven't seen Nebraska play with a lot of confidence. They're not playing really well, but it strikes me as they're confident in what they're doing. And sometimes that's a big portion of the battle.
Schaefer, I'm curious, we've talked about Teddy Prohaska a decent amount, for obvious reasons with the situation on the offensive line. I was a little concerned about how he looked earlier in the season. Didn't necessarily look like he was 100%, or maybe not the version that maybe we thought. And I don't even know how real that version was of what we thought he was, because it was in such a limited sample size.
6 quarters, basically.
Yeah, early in his career. I guess, how much of it to you is maybe we didn't really have a correct grasp on what he was early in his career? How much of it do you think is just the injuries and maybe even his added growth has taken a toll on his movement, and how much was just, hey, he's coming back from injury, he's a little rusty, hasn't played a ton of football in the last couple of years.
Yeah, I think there's a portion of this that, we built Teddy Prohaska to be more than he probably was. Because again, he had started 6 quarters of football before getting hurt against Michigan in 2021. He had played prior to that, but it hadn't been quite the same as, and then obviously his start coincides with Nebraska just completely destroying Northwestern. So you kind of have that in the background of all of it. Then you have these injuries. And for me, I think the largest portion of it has little to do with the physical side of things, because I think a lot of it for Teddy Prohaska is between the ears right now. I mean, he talked last year after the North Dakota game that he didn't have the confidence that he felt like he needed to be out there to play left tackle, which is a scary thing to hear from your offensive lineman, and particularly your blindside blocker. I think that mental side of it has been the biggest reason why he's still chasing or hasn't been, the guy at left tackle this year. And the other thing is he doesn't have a ton of experience either. So, for him, I think Nebraska is going to have to treat this game on Saturday. They're probably going to have to give extra help. You're going to have to chip with tight ends. You're going to have to chip with your up back or your running back. I mean, you're going to potentially want to roll away from Teddy Prohaska's side. I don't know that you can comfortably say that you know what you're going to get from a guy who struggled as much as he did against Michigan. And granted, it's Michigan. But otherwise has had 2 kind of walkabout seasons so far since the last real meaningful, consistent playing time he had in 2021. So I think because of all of that, you kind of treat him a little bit differently. And at the same time, you're trying to build that confidence. I hope he spends a lot of time this week with the sports psychologists over there at Nebraska. I hope that they have an opportunity to really kind of build up some confidence for him. I think it's a critical thing. I mean, this is his job the rest of the year. Mm-hmm. And it is huge for Nebraska. Like, let's say this goes okay to well. They have a potential left tackle now for a couple years after that. Mm-hmm. They have an actual asset developed in real time who went through the trauma and everything else to come out the other side and give you a potential starting piece at the area of the roster where you're, quite frankly, the weakest. This is huge for Nebraska. I think that, the investment in Teddy Prohaska needs to be big, and they need to make sure that the confidence can stay high and that mentally he feels like he's sharp, because what they can get out of it is so much bigger than what they're going to be able to find in the transfer portal. I mean, I just think the reality of trying to go in and getting a guy like Walter Rouse, that was a once in a blue moon situation, and it didn't even come to fruition. I don't think you can bank on that. So if Teddy Prohaska can develop into being your starting left tackle for 2024, that's the best thing that could happen for Nebraska in this whole situation.
Schaefer, we got into this a bit yesterday. There is a world where Nebraska wins the Big Ten West and plays in the Big Ten championship game. But is that a world you think is beneficial enough to see Nebraska get blown out?
Yeah, it is. Because it's a step that they haven't been able to take in a long time. I mean, if that's what were to happen, they have to win out, right? So I guess I would take 9-4 with a pair of blowout losses to the 2 best teams that you play. And then I would look at it like, okay, you started 0-2, then you finished 9-4. So you finished 9-2. You lost to the 2 best teams that you played. You took care of that soft underbelly of the Big Ten, teams that you're going to be going up against, teams that you're going to have to make your money against every year going forward. That would tell me that there's probably even more development happening there within the organization. That means they probably took a little bit of a step forward offensively. It's hard to imagine the game against Northwestern, that team winning the Big Ten. Maybe they could. Maybe the defense can just do the entire thing for them. But I think that the lift it would give you, and it would sort of, jumpstart this whole thing. And once you get into the transfer portal, you're talking about the 2025, 2026 recruiting. You're talking about Matt Rhule being able to go to the kids in Texas and be like, all right, look at that. Come up to Nebraska. We're already winning things in 1 year here. So I think the benefits of it would far exceed the fact that you would be on Fox on December 2nd, potentially staring at like a 35-7 game early in the third quarter. I mean, if that's what it was, look, Nebraska lost 70 to something, and in 2012, and they'd still prefer to win the division than not. I mean, that's just the reality of it. Like, yes, it's an extra loss, but then they turn around, they get to play in a January 1 bowl game, more than likely. You'd be going to Tampa, or you'd be playing in the Cheez-Its Bowl. I mean, who wouldn't want that? Seriously. Like, compared to where this program was a year ago or 2 years ago, where your athletic director talks everyone into the idea that you're going to save money by reducing the buyout, bringing back a lame duck coach, and 2 years later, you're in the Big Ten championship. I think it's worth it. I definitely do.
Yeah, Schaefer, I guess I because I'm on the other side of it. I don't necessarily want to see Nebraska lose by 50 to Ohio State or whoever.
Sure.
But so I guess I just wonder how much extra benefit is there from going, let's say 8-4 in the regular season, not having the extra game in the Big Ten championship, and not having to be on national TV, getting your head kicked in. I guess just how much extra benefit is there from like 9-4 with a butt kicking on national television, and 8-4 with, hey, we're still going to a bowl game that's probably a few slots too high because we're Nebraska and we're going to travel. Like, I guess I just don't feel like there's necessarily a huge difference there.
I think it all depends on who's able to derive and sell the benefit, right? And I think Matt Rhule is someone that would be good at selling this as a benefit to his team, to the recruits. And so I think because he's already kind of a natural sales-oriented individual, he's always crafting messages and you know, I shouldn't say pushing them on people, but I mean, it's really what he kind of does. I think that it would be good and beneficial in this. Like, look, Nebraska's 2024 schedule features some behemoths on there. And, you know, maybe you look at this as like, okay, you had these two opportunities against Michigan and whichever team represents the Big Ten East. It didn't go well. How can we learn from that moving forward? I think everything's a teachable moment for Matt Rhule. And I think that they could benefit from playing in that game. And I think he could use it to his benefit in terms of recruiting and everything else. And I don't think this is the biggest thing, but it would provide a little bit of balm to the burn that's been the Big Ten West for Nebraska. You go out the last year of it, you win the division. This is what you were supposed to do when you showed up the entire time. I think getting people to talk about Nebraska's return under Matt Rhule is a bigger benefit for the offseason than what the loss is necessarily in the moment. But
right, you're starting to sell me a little bit.
That's a little bit of like having to believe in something that's deeper than just a game right in front of it. Now, nobody wants to be embarrassed, but the small piece of hardware in your first season for Matt Rhule, I think would win over some of the people still that are detractors of him.
Schaefer, got about a minute here quickly, and you've been bringing up Michigan's name left and right. What was your instant reaction to seeing the report that popped out yesterday?
Yeah, I mean, I was someone who thought it was going to be pretty bad when it first initially came out. I mean, I didn't think that it was just going to be this small thing, and maybe I'm just conditioned because of the Houston Astros to expect sort of a large, vast conspiracy, but that's what it's been. And frankly, with the recruiting violations that Michigan downplayed, and they seem more significant to the NCAA than what's been portrayed, and they couldn't come to an agreement. Throw in two more violations like this, 30 games. And then the damning thing to me was Penn State, Ohio State, tickets on either side.
Yeah.
I think this is
what a big dummy
for Michigan. And if the Big Ten had any cojones whatsoever, Michigan wouldn't be allowed to play in the Big Ten championship.
Schaefer, got like 10 seconds. Travis wants to know how much of a home field advantage was an impact on that American Revolution being played on American soil as opposed to Britain.
You know, pretty big. I would say home field right now, about 2.5 points. I would say in that time, probably 4.5.
Okay.
4.5 points. You know the landscape a little bit better. You know which areas to avoid.
You don't have to travel.
Yep.
Travel back
the
then.
Travel,
back
big
then.
Part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Coming over on boats. I mean, it's
the time change. What are we talking about?
You don't have to quarter troops anymore because of the Bill of Rights
Second Amendment.
and all
Second
that.
Amendment right there.
Was a big part of it.
They didn't even have their equipment.
Schaefer, we appreciate it. We'll talk to you later.
Have a good one, guys.
See you, Schaefer.
Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi Lulla. Andrew Rogers here with me as well. We are on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and for this third hour. We are in KFOR in Lincoln as well. Coming up in the next segment, we're going to talk to a big brother from the Big Brothers Big Sisters organization and get some good information from Eric there. But in the meantime, we've been talking a lot about quarterbacks today, especially with the
Can I ask one question real quick?
Sure.
And I know this is not what you want to get into, but just really quick, is changing something in the NCAA the hardest thing to do? Like what he was talking about there in this clip.
I don't know if it's the hardest thing to do, but they don't make it easy.
Yeah, it is unreasonably hard to
It's
try.
difficult.
Well, I mean, yeah, they're not famously adaptable people. You know, they don't really. They took them forever to figure out the NIL. It took them forever to figure out some common sense transfer portal
But we're
stuff.
making progress towards that, though.
I mean, we didn't really make progress toward it. The NCAA was just like, well, all the states are doing this, so I guess do whatever you want.
Yeah, but the technology piece has to be done.
And that's an easy change.
Look, they do it in high school.
Yeah.
Like there are ways.
And it's not even one of those things that they have to be like, well, like NIL, they were like, well, you know, it can affect the other sports. It's not just a football thing. It's not just a Division I thing. Like, yeah, I understand there's other divisions that, okay, maybe they can't afford the things and the helmet. I don't care. Like, if you can have technology, you should be able to have it. It's not.
They can afford it.
Yeah, like this is not a big deal. I don't understand.
And that's how you get around any issues like this.
Yeah.
Moving forward.
Because you just talk to them in the helmet.
But you don't need an example to get around something.
No.
You just do it because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, because it's common sense, which the NCAA is not terrific at.
Those guys are learning by fire. You know what I mean?
Let me take a second and tweet that real fast.
hold on. I know you guys are going to tweet out all your updates real quick.
Tweet that news out, so I'll give you a second.
I wanted to kind of go through this NFL quarterback would you rather exercise. We were talking a lot about Brock Purdy, and I'm still reasonably high on him. I don't think he's got the ceiling of a lot of these. You know, we talked about like Mahomes and Rodgers and some of those guys that are really famous for their fourth quarter comebacks and stuff like that. And obviously Brock Purdy came up short yesterday, but I'm kind of curious because a lot of times we think of this as like a big picture thing, but let's say you've got a draft of NFL quarterbacks.
Me draft?
You love to draft, right?
I'm a big fantasy guy.
So obviously your Patrick Mahomes, your Joe Burrows, your Justin Herberts, your Lamar Jacksons, your Josh Allens, your Jalen Hurts are going to go off the board pretty early, and we're not really having that conversation because it's a no-brainer, right? But you kind of get into this upper middle class and below of NFL quarterbacks, and it starts to get a little more interesting. So, like for instance, Kirk Cousins really good last night. But he's kind of that middle class, upper middle class quarterback in the NFL, right?
Yeah, I'm not a Kirk Cousins fan.
That's because of fantasy reasons. You get all bent out of shape because of fantasy. But let's say, okay, so Kirk Cousins or Dak Prescott, who are you taking?
I would take Kirk Cousins.
Okay, so let's go Kirk Cousins or Derek Carr.
I would take Kirk Cousins.
Okay, last night notwithstanding, Kirk Cousins or Brock Purdy?
I would still take No, I'd take Brock Purdy. I would take Brock Purdy, but
are you considering like contract? Are you considering age?
I'm
like what are you
considering everything?
That and you should. You have to, right?
I'm considering all pieces of that because Kirk Cousins is what now? 30.
He's in mid 30s, I think. I think he's 34, 35, 36, somewhere in there.
And Brock Purdy is 24.
And he's on a minimum contract.
Right.
You're paying Kirk Cousins quite a bit.
And I'm trying to take out the team here because
yeah, you have to take out the team. You have to take out the surroundings, the coach, everything. But we're talking talent, contract, age. So you take Brock Purdy over Kirk Cousins.
I would lean Brock Purdy, but it's close.
And
it's close because Kirk Cousins, no matter what team he plays on, will find his receivers.
He performs.
He will get the stats. He won't put up great fantasy numbers for me.
So part of it
part
with Brock Purdy is you're probably hoping like, hey, he's close right now, but he's young. Maybe there's more upside there. Is that part of it as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
I go with the upside claim because there's a lot of potential that we haven't seen yet.
Yeah.
And I would lean young and recover old.
Let's go. So we're at Brock Purdy. Let's go Brock Purdy or Kenny Pickett?
Oh, Brock Purdy.
Okay. I assume Brock Purdy over Mac Jones.
Oh, Mac Jones for sure. No, Brock Purdy.
Okay, here's a couple interesting ones. Brock Purdy or Russell Wilson?
And gosh, if Russell did not play as bad as he did last season,
And then also remember the contract.
and his contract is massive,
Ridiculous.
An old soul.
I am going to say Brock Purdy. But it's crazy to say that a Super Bowl winning quarterback, a multi-Super Bowl winning quarterback.
Oh, no,
Right?
he just got the one. He went to 2.
Yeah, okay, you're right. You're
Yeah.
right. A Super Bowl winning quarterback is not
The guy you're picking.
the guy I'm choosing in this scenario.
Okay, and I thought that's how I would have gone as well. Okay, Brock Purdy or Deshaun Watson?
Unpopular, I would choose Deshaun Watson.
So talent-wise, Deshaun's way ahead of Brock Purdy, right?
And
He's
I'm going
played
with the talent here.
so bad recently.
He has.
The contract's absurd.
Mhm.
You've also got some of the other baggage, although legally that all seems to be cleared up. Just a lot of people don't like him.
Talent that outweighs what
His
Brock
overall
Purdy
talent's
brings.
a lot higher, right? Okay, so let's go from Deshaun Watson now. Actually, there's one more I want to ask you. No, that's good. So we're on Deshaun Watson. We go Deshaun Watson or Jared Goff?
Jared Goff.
Okay.
100%. Jared Goff
Is really good.
He's
Like,
a lot better than we gave him credit for. And when I say we, I don't mean us.
Like
I mean
everybody.
the world.
Yeah, like everybody. He's been really
He's
good.
the number one pick, right?
He's been really
when
good.
he got drafted number 1 to the Rams, people were like,
But this is what
Who is it? Who went right after Jared Goff? I cannot remember.
Ooh, I'd have to look that up. Give me a second here. Jared, and honestly, so he had the one good year where they went to the Super Bowl under McVay, and then McVay,
But
honestly,
that was more built on defense.
a lot of the, I think, hate on Jared Goff was because McVay soured on him. And I don't know that he actually changed that much. I think McVay just was kind of like, hey, I want someone better than this, or I want someone that can do X, Y, and Z.
Well, and he got it out of Matt Stafford.
He did. Yeah, absolutely.
And this is kind of the scenario we're in right now, right? Do you take Matt Stafford or Jared Goff?
So that was the next question.
So it's funny you say that, because at that time I would have taken Matt Stafford, because Matt Stafford will go down as one of the best quarterbacks in NFL history. And at the time, he was on a horrible team.
Yeah.
Like him and Calvin Johnson were insane. He always put up great numbers. He was a fighter. I remember when he went in with like a broken arm at one point.
Or is like a dislocated shoulder.
Dislocated shoulder.
Yeah.
He threw a touchdown pass to win. Like, he is a fighter, really good quarterback, great stats, ton of talent, but he was better at the time than Jared Goff. Now I would say Jared Goff, though.
Yeah, I think I would take Jared Goff too, if nothing else, age.
But at the time, it worked for the Rams because they needed a veteran presence in that room.
And honestly, it's worked for both teams. Like, the Rams got what they wanted, the Lions got what they wanted. So the second guy taken in that one was Carson Wentz. So I think, you definitely take Goff. Early, you would have taken Wentz.
I would have taken Wentz
early, right?
Before he got hurt.
So you've got Goff over Stafford. So Jared Goff over. We got about a minute here. Let's start making this a little bit more difficult on you.
Geno Smith.
Jared, I think I take Goff over Smith, no question. Jared Goff or Tua?
Tua.
Okay. You answered that one really quickly.
Yeah, because Tua has he has more of a skill set than Jared Goff. Jared Goff, great at airing the football out. Tua can do the same thing, but I like Tua's IQ more than I like Jared Goff's.
Fair. So Tua or, I'm going to get in trouble here, Trevor Lawrence.
Both very, very talented. I may lean Lawrence there.
I do too, because I think Tua's been in a better position.
I think so as well.
Like, if you swap positions, I think Trevor Lawrence is probably
super successful in Miami as well.
As successful, if not more successful than Tua currently is. And Tua, I think, would be less successful.
But
in Jacksonville.
they're pretty
That's
close.
not a knock on Tua.
They're pretty close.
They really are pretty close. That was a fun exercise. I enjoyed that.
Same. My brain's working.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. All right, coming up next, we're going to talk to Eric. He is a big brother with the Big Brothers Big Sisters organization. That is coming up next as we wrap up the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. As we wrap up the show here on a Tuesday on Hurrdat Sports Radio, I'm Ravi Lulla. Andrew Rogers here with me as well. We're about to talk to Eric Bird. He is a mentor with Big Brothers Big Sisters. Want to remind you, our friends over at Big Brothers Big Sisters, it's their mission to support one-to-one mentoring relationships that ignite the power and promise of youth. Go to mentoromaha.org to sign up to become a big, which is Eric. Terrific to have you here. That's what you did. You became a big with the Big Brothers Big Sisters organization. I guess before you decided to sign up, before you decided to become a big, like what led you to that point where that's something you want to get involved with?
Well, I'm a former Husker, so the first time I got introduced to mentoring was through Tom Osborne's program. So I started doing it down there, and then once I graduated, moved to Omaha, I wanted to get involved and keep doing the same things. And Big Brothers Big Sisters here had a need, and got introduced to them with their great leadership over there. And in 2015, met my little mentee, and we still are going at it today, 8 years later.
So, your little mentee, talk to us a little bit about him and, I guess because there's always been interest for a lot of people to join this great organization, but I think the worry a little bit is, will my mentee match up with my personality? And I don't know if that has a lot to do with like the onboarding process, like you check boxes of your interests and things like that, and then they find a way to mesh. But tell us a little bit about your little mentee and why you guys are a perfect fit.
Yep. So you actually described it perfectly. So
All
the
right.
first thing you do, if you want to become a mentor, the first thing you do is you fill out almost like a dating app for yourself. And you say, what you're interested in, things that you might look for in a little mentees as well. Mentee and his parents or guardians will fill out the same form, say what they're looking for in a mentor. And then the great people over at Big Brothers Big Sisters will start to look through profiles and match people with who they think are best. They'll call you, they'll say, hey, we think we have a good match. This is what he's into. This is what is going on in his life. So if you want to meet them, we would love to get you introduced. So that's the process that you go through. I met Cordell Young about in the summer of 2015, and he was into sports and all the different things that I was into as well. Our timing was right. He was on the wait list not that long. I was ready to get going as well. So then we got introduced. We took pictures on the first day. We came up with a plan on kind of what we were going to do, talk to mom, see what she wanted to get out of the whole thing. And then after that, we basically just communicate back and forth with mom to set up outings and things like that. Big Brothers Big Sisters every 1 or 2 months will call us to check in to make sure everything's still going well. But other than that, it's direct communication with the family, and we set up weekly or monthly outings. And like I said, I met him when he was 7 years old, and now he's 15 years old, getting ready to drive, which is crazy.
So that's one of the coolest parts of these relationships, right? Is they're long-term deals, as you mentioned. So you've been with Cordell for 8 years, from 7 to 15. So I guess just how has that kind of relationship changed as he's gotten older, as your life's changed a little bit? Like, how does that work in these kind of long-term arrangements? Because it's not just like, oh, you meet a kid and you're hanging out with him for a year or whatever. You're with these kids for a long time.
Yeah, hopefully you stick with it for a long time, because if you can see who they become, that's what makes it the best. You get a lot out of it as a mentor as well. You get introduced to things that maybe you've never seen before. You get more empathy towards other people and their situations, and it makes you grow as a person. But really, one of the best things that you get out of it is when you take a 6-7-year-old kid and get to the point where they are a completely different person. I mean, don't get me wrong, he still has some of his personality traits
Sure.
we don't lose, but he is now a completely different person. He wants a job, he wants to be able to make money, he wants to start driving cars so he can get ready to be 16 years old.
Yep.
He's really, really into musical instruments, which I would have never imagined 5 years ago that he's doing drums and piano and guitar and all these different things now. So it's really amazing to see what they become interested in, and really just the maturity that he's gone through now of, being almost like a little established adult compared to when we first met, and all he wanted to do is drink Mountain Dew and eat Doritos and all the other stuff. It's like, man, now he's like, oh, that stuff upsets my stomach, and I got to eat.
Well, it's because you're the CEO of a healthy meals company. That's why.
We try to get him to eat healthy, but man, it's hard, right?
Hey, so you said you got into it because you were a Husker player, and I'm kind of curious, is this something that like T.O. brought upon like the team and said you have to get involved in the community, or is Big Brothers Big Sisters something you always wanted to be a part of, and that was just kind of like the kick in the rear to like just do it?
Yeah, I think it was something I always wanted to be a part of. So T.O., this would have been, I was there from 2005 to 2009 down in Lincoln. So he just presented to us with the academic advisors and some of like the life skills department people down there. It basically just said, we have this mentoring program. If anybody's interested, here's what you got to do. So that's when I first started with it. So then, when I left Lincoln, the teammates, you have to almost be in the school with the kids. So it's a little bit different. The outings have to be supervised, some of those things. With Big Brothers, you can just pick up your little mentee and go wherever you want, do whatever you want. So when I wasn't living in Lincoln anymore, I pretty much had to switch over to an Omaha-based one.
Mhm.
And that's where I think Big Brothers Big Sisters has the big national name. They get recognition all over the place, so people know who they are. So for me, it was an easy transition to say, this is a great organization. I went to the website. It looked like they needed about 100 extra male mentors. So I was like, all right, this is perfect. I'm signing up. And I think it was a month later, I was with Cordell, and here we are now.
Wow.
So what are some of your favorite activities over the 8 years you've been with Cordell that you've been able to experience with him? Because I know Big Brothers Big Sisters does a really good job of trying to help facilitate that. I know you can kind of do some stuff on your own as well. Like, what are some of their favorite things that you've been able to do?
Yeah, so when we first started out, almost every single Tuesday afternoon, we'd go out to eat somewhere.
Sure.
Because I love food. I'm a big food guy myself. And so that's what we do when we first start out. We do a lot of rec center stuff. Before I did Eat Fit Go, I worked at Lifetime Fitness forever. And if you guys have ever been out there, it's like a castle. It's like a resort
There's
style
plenty of
fitness
things
place.
to do.
Yeah, so we walk into that place and, he's in heaven, because he's got basketball and he wants to lift weights and do pull-ups and all the other stuff. So we go to the gym sometimes, we go to rec centers, we go to libraries sometimes when he's not doing well in school. We would, I would say, all right, we're going to the library today instead of Lifetime. I'm like, all right, man, I better get better grades. I don't want to be doing this
We can go
anymore.
to Lifetime every week, yeah.
But now, our most common thing, like I said, he's playing 3 or 4 different instruments now. So I kind of feel guilty sometimes, but we'll go over to the Guitar Center in Oakview, and it's
just
kind
let
of
him go.
kind of abandoned over there. Nobody goes to Oakview anymore, so it's pretty empty. And they just have all the instruments out for everybody to play at all times. So he'll do drums for 20 minutes until his hands wear out, and then he'll go over to the guitar, and then he'll try the piano. And most recently, we love going over there and just kind of being so almost like just hanging out, doing nothing really while he plays instruments.
Man, how rewarding has this experience been for you? Like personally, you wanted to be a part of it. You've seen it develop over 7-8 years time now. But for you, like, how rewarding has it been just to say, like, wow, like I'm doing it. I've done it. I want to keep doing it.
Yeah, it's pretty. You start to not think about it as much, I guess, when you get past like that 3rd, 4th, and 5th year, and it's just what shocks me now is I'll see people that I haven't seen in a long time, right? COVID shut everything down. I host a big tailgate for Husker football games, and there's all kinds of things that I do out in the community. And sometimes I'll see people I haven't seen in 5 years, like ex-employees, whatever it may be. And sometimes people will say, are you still mentoring Cordell? And I'll say, yeah, I can, if you can believe that. And then they'll say, I can't believe you're doing it for that long. That's insane, but for when you're doing it yourself, it just, it just seems kind of normal. But yeah, what you get out of it is, like I was saying before, that just perspective of other people's lives. And, I always make the joke. I say this almost narcissistically or selfishly, but I don't have kids yet, and this is giving me all the opportunity to practice being the best dad possible. So I'm being selfish here and getting practice with Cordell and his family on how to be, the best dad possible, hopefully someday when I have my own kids.
So I know something that I've wondered about is when Cordell gets to be, like 18 in college and stuff like that. Obviously, I'm sure you'll keep that relationship, but do you think you'll go and like try and find another mentee that's younger and kind of continue this work?
Yeah, I do. And the other thing that I think will happen is hopefully Cordell will want to become a mentor too.
Sure.
So once he graduates and, hopefully goes off to college and does his thing and comes back to Omaha, hopefully I will stay in touch with him probably forever. But then hopefully he'll say, now I'm graduated from college, I got a job, I want to start doing the same thing. And so hopefully he can mentor somebody, and then hopefully I can take on somebody new too.
What's the best part about this whole thing, this overall experience? Is it just seeing him grow into the man that he is?
Yeah, it's nuts. So quick story about him is, like, when we first started, he's the ultimate salesman, dude. Like, I don't know what he's going to do when he
he's
goes
got to come work for you someday.
I tell him he's going to sell, or he's got to be a financial advisor. He's got to be a lawyer or something. Because when we would first get together, he would want Mountain Dew, Flamin' Hot Cheetos. We'd be at the bowling alley, whatever it be. And I'd be like, no, dude, I don't. First of all, I don't even carry cash, so I don't have stuff at the vending machine.
Right.
This kid would go to the other people bowling next to us and be like, hey, I really want a Mountain Dew. My brother over here, he doesn't carry cash with him. And, if you could just give me $1. And I'm like, dude, what the heck, man? What? I just went to the bathroom for a minute. Where'd you get that $1 from? But, so he was
come back from the bathroom, he's chugging a Mountain Dew.
What the heck? And so now, to see him grow up into the point where he's like, oh my God, I can't believe I used to do that stuff. And now, he's making his own money. He's got a job and all this other stuff. It's, seeing that transition from, him, just doing whatever the heck he wanted to do. It's not doing that great in school to now being a sophomore at Central High School, getting ready to get his driver's license. Some of these other things are pretty crazy.
Eric, we definitely appreciate your time, and we appreciate, I mean, just kind of on behalf of everybody at Hurrdat and just kind of the community in general, the work you're doing with
Amen.
Cordell, and obviously big brothers, big sisters. I mean, how did you get involved, and how can other people get involved?
Yeah, so if you could just go to mentoromaha.org, like you guys were saying, that's where it starts from. The other thing I'll say too is it's not that time consuming. It's not like an every.
That's a worry
week.
for a lot of people.
Yeah, for sure, and it's totally understandable. It's not an every week type of thing for 2 hours. I mean, now that Cordell's a little bit older, we see each other maybe once a month, you know, and we'll do a 3 to 4 hour outing where we'll go to a movie, we'll do something. But it's not as time consuming as you think. If you want to do an hour a week or maybe, you know, a couple hours a month, start out that way, and then you kind of change as you go. You know, you can start with that freedom. But mentoromaha.org.
There you go. That's Eric Bird. He is a big brother. You can be a big brother or big sister as well. Go to mentoromaha.org to find out how you can get involved. Eric, thank you so much. We appreciate your time.
Thank you, guys.
We will be back tomorrow, almost halfway through the week already. We'll figure it out.
We always do.
That's Hurrdat Sports Radio. We'll be back tomorrow.